Glory be and mercy me. We've done it yet again. Here we are, live streaming away. My dog Milo is sitting here. I'm talking now, and so he's like, "What's going on? Something's happening. Oh my goodness. The world. It's a place where we live. Oh my." Tomorrow I am going to a protest. It is 11:30. It's here in Toronto, 931 Yonge Street. It's 11:30 a.m. I'm gonna be really honest about it, man. And I've talked to other people who go to these protests and who do this kind of stuff. I never look forward to it. I never look forward to it. It's always very emotional. It's always very difficult. It's becoming more difficult. Hey, Major, how you doing, bud? It's becoming more difficult because now, since the trucker convoy protest, Famita, how you doing? I was waiting for you. Oh, well. I feel so blessed. It's so lovely, Famita. Since the trucker convoy protest, the right has become more emboldened to voice its opinion. Oh, yeah, Famita, come on. You're busting my balls. I was literally typing up something to someone and sent it away, and I knew I was over. How dare you, Famita? How dare you? You keeping time on me? That's funny. The last time I went to a protest, there were construction workers off on the side who were heckling us for a good period of time. Outright, the classic stuff, get a job, all this stuff. Right, literally, we've got people in wheelchairs. We got people walking around with canes. We've got disabled people, right? And there are people on the sidelines just heckling. You know, it's difficult to believe we live in a civil society when the response to desperate people, disabled people, finally standing up for themselves and getting themselves organized enough to protest, and the response is people honking their horns, anger, frustration, heckling, right? It's difficult to believe that we are adults. It's difficult to believe that we live in a civil society at all with these experiences. Hey, Dan, how you doing, bud? And so, protest tomorrow, 11:30 a.m., 9:31. We're just going to keep doing these protests until people start showing up. That's really what it comes down to. Every single protester who has organized protests, every single protest organizer I've ever talked to has said the same story, which is you organize protest after protest after protest, and literally you get 5 people show up, 10 people show up, 2 people show up, 5 people show up, 2,000 people show up. That's the way it works. That's the way it works, and no one understands why. Can't make it to this one, but my friend and I are coming to the 28th one. Fantastic, Fabita. Fantastic. The ODSP one might actually be could be quite large, actually. So I'm definitely interested to see what happens with that. Isabella has planned a protest on that same day in the morning, and then in the afternoon is the ODSP one. So it's a full day of protest for me. And I am wondering if she's going to carry forward with that. Hold on, because I'm going to ask her. But this is the one that Rob has been saying, right? Join us, Queen's Park, Thursday, April 28th at 11 a.m., right? And then, so it's the ODSP one is at 11 a.m. Then I know that we've got another one. Here's, of course, some protests coming out of Socialist Action saying no. Come on. Here we go. And then on the 28th, Yonge and Dundas, 2:30 to 5:30. So the ODSP rally, and then 2:30 to 5:30, April 28th, Yonge and Dundas, which is like our Times Square. We've blocked Yonge and Dundas several times. And so I'm probably just going to go to Queen's Park and then loop over to this one. Unless Isabella gets convinced to sort of fold these two in. We'll see. Yeah, whatever happened to a no man is an island? Yeah. No, it's but we are all supposed to think that way. What do you think the individualism argument? Yep. Society doesn't exist. That's Thatcherism, right? That's a Thatcher quote, right? That society doesn't exist, that we're all just individuals, right? Like this fake non-existent farce, right? Like this just fantasy land. I was saying yesterday, man, like that we're what time is tomorrow? Tomorrow is, let's just get it 100%, 11:30 a.m. 11:30 a.m., 931 Yonge Street. What's the Thatcher meme? What's the Thatcher meme? I gotta reorganize this. I think I'm gonna change the live stream into just memes. Because what happens is like people start having like a conversation in the general, and then they like move the conversation over to live stream, and so for someone like me it becomes a lot more difficult. So I think I'm going to start creating like, this is just going to be for memes and stuff. Anyway, that's internal kind of stuff. Don't need to worry about that. Posted a bunch. Is it the general? Like okay. Where? I love this one, by the way. I super love this one. That's my favorite. Y'all check your pulse just to flex on Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, fuck you, Margaret Thatcher, right? If you work hard enough, you can replace depression with exhaustion. Yeah. Guys who dress like this have a 100% chance of brutalizing your family. Absolutely. Got some good fuck the police memes. Got some good, yeah. Radical left. I love it. That's what I hear whenever I absolutely love this one, by the way. This got posted on the NDP forum, and the NDPers there are they hate it. Like the main comment that came out of it was like, this is horrible. People will be repelled from this. This is awful. And I'm basically looking at it being like, what are you talking about? Like, this is fucking rad as shit. Right? Like I wish, right? That's kind of what I like. I wish, right? I wish that this was Andrea Horvath, right? Actually walking around with this like sigil. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. 1025 mark, right? Okay, hold on. Look at the Capitol Hill autonomous zone one. All right. Where am I here? There's just so much. So you see how, if you're not in the Discord, guys, you got to get into the Discord, right? You see how active everybody is? People are way more active in this than I am. I do read it all. I just am like, and I interject every so often. But you guys are like, okay, where is this one, Famita? Come on. Okay, is it the Capitol? Is this, okay, here we go. Or original free, and later there was an occupation protest and self-declared autonomous zone in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The zone was established. Yeah. Like, so you create, is this it? Am I looking at the right thing? I'm pretty sure I'm looking at the right thing. Why don't you repost it right at the start? Like, repost the thing you want me to take a look at right here, and I'll take a look. What if we kissed at the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone? Yeah, of course they're creating autonomous zones. Like, the powerful are going to create autonomous zones because they're going to tell you where you can and cannot protest, right? And just the thing you want me to look at for me to just put it right here, and I'll look right at it. Read the last part. On June 13th, Black Lives Matter protests continue in Seattle. Oh my goodness, Famita. Just like take the thing you want me to look at, put it right here. This is a good show today. This is a good show. This is a good show today. Yeah. Hey Watson, how you doing, bud? We got a good show for you guys. The organization. Are you seeing it? Right? We're so well organized. It's on the meme already. Oh, I see. What if we kissed at the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone and then gave it back to the First Nations people since it's stolen land? I mean, sure. Like, I'm down. Like, places have already done this, right? Oklahoma already did this. And, like, I'm far more interested in, like, why are they creating this autonomous zone in the first place? Like, they're creating places where people can't, Famita wants to get in on it, is what it is. Famita wants to get in on it. Plus, you won't get sniped on Zoom. I don't know what that means even. All right. So, what do we got? Elon Musk says, like, you guys are starting to see, right? Like it's got to be the case that we are starting to put together how detached these people are, right? Like, I had a conversation today with someone who I literally said to them, Ford cut the minimum wage, right? And he did. There's a minimum wage increase, right? The minimum wage increase was planned here in Toronto and in Ontario, and the minimum wage increase was set to go into effect, and Ford eliminated it, right? He got rid of the minimum wage increase. He cut it, right? And I literally was talking to a person who's just like, Ford didn't cut the minimum wage, you're lying. And I'm like, it's very well understood, right? Like, I showed documents, like, literally, and they started to go into a semantic argument of like, well, this isn't a cut. Like, he didn't decrease the minimum wage, right? He didn't cut the minimum wage. He just didn't let a minimum wage go through, right? It's like, that's a cut. And then very steadily, I started to realize that I was talking to somebody who has a mental illness. But it's starting to get harder and harder to distinguish between people on the right and people on the right and people who have, like, a significant mental illness. Like, we're talking about a denial of reality. We're talking about a denial of reality that is, like, earth-shakingly huge. Like, I know that I'm not, like, a clinician, right? But, like, if my toilet got plugged and I called a plumber and the plumber walked in and said, your toilet's not plugged, well, I would fire that plumber and I would find a new one who acknowledged that reality exists. And, like, we're talking, like, I'm talking to people now who like, you can show them, like, yeah, Ford cut the minimum wage. And it just doesn't exist. It just isn't real. It's just not part of the situation, right? And what do we do about that? Like, really? Because their entire ethos, right, is we have the right to speak and we're going to speak and you can't silence us and all of this. And they view anybody contradicting them as an infringement on their speech when, like, we're literally standing up and saying to them, you're delusional. And clearly they are, right? Like, Elon Musk says almost anyone can afford a $100,000 ticket to Mars. Like, it's diluted. Like, it's detached from reality in significant and major ways. Right? Like, we, at some point, we actually do need to have a serious conversation that perhaps it is the case that we are being ruled by people who have significant mental illnesses. And like just yesterday I was talking about Jordan Peterson. And then I went around my day and all that, and while I was going around my day I had like a realization moment of like, and I put it on the Discord, where, oh yeah, Jordan Peterson has schizophrenia. Right? Like this is something that nobody actually talks about or brings up or says in the conversation when you start talking about Peterson, but it should be at the forefront of the conversation. Like, Peterson writes in his book Maps of Meaning about an experience he had as a young man, which sounds like schizophrenia. He has taken several drugs to manage his schizophrenia. He's even gone to rehab in order to cleanse himself of an addiction to one of these drugs, where he was diagnosed as schizophrenic. But his official stance is that he's not schizophrenic, that he's been misdiagnosed. And this is like the premier voice on the right, right? Like, which isn't to say that people with schizophrenia shouldn't be listened to or have less of an opinion or any of that kind of stuff, but it definitely sheds light on why he thinks the way he thinks and how he acts the way he acts, right? And people like Elon Musk, I look at and I'm just like, this guy's got some like significant daddy issues, and like literally born with like emerald mine apartheid slave money, and everybody thinks he's like a super genius. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. He cut the wage. He denied the right raise for ODSP. Yeah. And like but you show this to his supporters. Like, you show this to Ford Nation and they just call you a liar. They just don't believe you. Fake news, right? Like, what are we supposed to do? And so the only option we've got left is to go into protest, right? Again, we're protesting 11:30 a.m., 931 Yonge Street. Come on down if you're in Toronto, right? Like, when we are faced with this level of delusion, when we're faced with this level of just total detachment, there's nothing else that we can do. Yeah, Fairy Creek's still an ongoing issue. Bye-bye old growth. Yeah. No, and the Premier of BC is really showing the NDP's colors, right? Which is just money, right? Like, it's that's all they care about. They're not going to listen to anybody. They're not gonna actually do what needs to be done. And like, they're gonna take the money and they're gonna pocket it, and they're just gonna sell out their own children, right? Like, that's the NDP way. Like, as much as I love the way this looks, right? Like, this isn't Andrea Horvath. Like, this isn't what she looks like. This isn't who she is. Not even close. I just think it's a funny meme. But I do like, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God, right? Yeah, liberal reformists are still reactionary liberals at the end of the day. Yeah. Like, and meanwhile, right, Elon Musk walking around saying, oh, anyone could afford a ticket, $100,000 to go to Mars, right? A UN price index of food items has hit a record high, right? You can see. Cereal price. Dairy price. Meat price. Food price overall. Right? We are seeing, I'm seeing reports, and I don't have like a document on this one, but I'm seeing lots of people commenting and lots of people talking about their own personal stories with farmers, and farmers outright saying, like, I can't afford to plant I don't have access to fertilizers. The price of fertilizers have gotten too much. The price of seed, the price of pesticide has gotten too much. It's no longer profitable for me to plant crops at all. This is a narrative that is beginning to come out of rural places, where rural farmers are actually saying that the price of business has gotten to be so that I can no longer afford to even plant the crops. Like, capitalism is generating a famine. It's generating a significant famine. It's not just the droughts. It's not just the disconnect from the natural world, right? The system itself has said of farmers, we're not going to support you. The free market is not going to allow you to even plant your crops or your any of this because it's no longer affordable for you to do so. I saw this when I went out to the East Coast. When I was at the East Coast, they had just come across new research to increase blueberry yields by a factor of 10, right? So you've got a factor of 10 increase on how many blueberries you can produce, right? And you do this by using beehives and putting beehives in select places at select times, right? So this is like the new research, and I was doing beekeeping out there, so I was really involved in this. And what happened to the blueberry growers? So they got 10 times the amount of blueberries. And all of them thought to themselves, oh boy, 10 times the amount of blueberries, I'm going to make 10 times the amount of money, right? But the reality is that there wasn't a market for it, right? Like, no, everybody was getting the amount of blueberries they wanted in the first place. So what did it do, right? What did it do? It cratered the price of blueberries. That's why for a period of time you had like blueberry everything. You could find like blueberry wine, blueberry peanut butter, blueberry ice cream, blueberry jam, blueberry this, blueberry that. Everything was blue, and like there was a blue version, and because blueberries were dirt cheap, and a lot of these blueberry farmers, after doing it one season, said, well, it's not really profitable for me to do. Right? Like I pay the beekeeper, and the beekeeper comes and he plants it and he does his thing, and that's great. And I get the berries, but then I turn around and sell them, and some of these guys are saying I end up making less overall from doing this, and it's more work, it's more effort, it's more hassle, right? And so there's your free market deciding, right? So we discovered a way to increase the productivity of blueberries by a factor of 10, but doing it punishes the farmer. It punishes the person who's actually growing it, right? And so instead of the populace just having access to extremely cheap or free food, right? We've created a system that says to the person who's doing the work, well, too bad, get fucked, right? And someone's really raised a point here. Farmers can afford to plant crops, sell their land to real estate developers. Yeah, you're starting to see this happen all over America, right? Where farmers are having to sell their land to people like Bill Gates, right? Because things have gotten so bad. But then they still need a place to work. So who do they end up working for, right? Bill Gates. So you end up with people who are living on their family farms, right? But no longer own those farms, and they become essentially serfs living on the land on a subsistence wage, because that's the way the economy has been structured, right? That's the way the market has decided, right? And it turns out that we're all being told, well, the market will decide, and sure, the market will decide. The market will decide to monopolize itself, and you'll sell yourself to that market that's been monopolized by billionaires. That's the system, right? And so, okay, buddy, you want to come up? 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 Wow. Wow. Yeah, sharecroppers, absolutely. And the famines are going to be the worst part. I've been saying it over and over again, right? The famines are going to be the worst part. And not only are the famines coming from the separation of our... oops, sorry. Oh, I'm a disaster today. Not only are the famines coming from a separation from us from the natural world, we've disconnected ourselves from the natural world, but it's coming from this kind of arrangement where people simply can't afford to grow food. Like, they can't afford to grow the food in the first place, and so they don't, right? And we're entering a real, like, tulip crisis, right? In the 14th century, there was a tulip crisis that happened in the Netherlands, right? Where a craze swept through the land, right? A craze swept through the land. Chairman Milo, that's funny. Get it together, John. And a tulip craze swept through the Netherlands, and everybody wanted tulips. And the wealthy people of the world, of the Netherlands, started to invest and speculate on future tulip crops, right? And these future tulip crops started to get planted instead of wheat, and it created a famine in the Netherlands. It created a starvation until finally somebody stood up and said, we can't eat tulips. This is insane. And everyone snapped to their senses, started to plant the food again, and the whole speculative tulip market collapsed completely. People lost everything. Yeah, I was just about to do that. Let's do the number draw. Let's do the number draw. Good time to say like, share, subscribe, right? Okay, here we go. I'm gonna join in the party. You guys, 7
Here we
7.
go for
I'm with
number.
You. 7.
It's April 19.
Let's go.
2022.
Here we go. David Lynch.
10 balls.
Got a good array of numbers.
Each ball has a number.
Is it gonna be a 7?
Numbers
It's gonna
1
be a
through
7.
10.
Ligandy's going with an 8. It was an 8 yesterday.
Swirl
We'll see.
the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. 7, 7, 7,
Pick
7.
a number.
7, 7, 7.
Today's number is
and 6.
6.
Barnabas. Ding, 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 ding. Barnabas picking up the victory today. Good for you, bud. Mocked, you and me, bud. I'm in with you now. Here we go. It was an 8 yesterday. It's a 6 today. David is making fun of us. David's making fun of us, Mocked. You can tell. He's just like, haha, bitches. No 7 for you. May the energy of the great and powerful David Lynch carry into your life. Oh, I know, Mr. Milo. I know. Lynch wears clown shoes. You know what? Probably, dude. Probably. But he would like wear the clown shoes and just be like, yeah, Famita, you were in on that too. He'd be wearing the clown shoes, and then you'd be like, what's with the clown shoes? And you'd be like, why not? And that'd be the end of the conversation. Hey, David, why are you wearing these shoes? They look like clown shoes. And we're like, I like them. You like looking like a clown? Like, sure. That's what I love about David Lynch, man. Like, he just says things occasionally that like I've never seen him like expound, you know? Like today's modern conversation and communication is always full of like, it's like people are intellectually filibustering all the time, right? Like your Ben Shapiro's and your Petersons and these guys, like, and even on online, and to a certain degree, I'll be honest, right? There's some intellectual filibustering happening right now, but but yeah, like you are what you wear, Lynch. And you'd be like, that's fine. Like he's just completely nonplussed, and it's just like, and he's always been that way. That's what I love about David Lynch, and he just doesn't feel like he needs to explain anything to you. Doesn't feel like he needs to like connect the dots for you or any of that kind of stuff. that you look at him and be like, so you're a clown. You'd be like, sure. You're like, oh, okay. There's been many respectable clowns. Bozo the clown. From liberationnews.org, I saw this. Yeah, you forgot Brittany, Watson. That's right. You can't have a list of comrades. Oh, I know. Oh, Mr. Milo. You're such a cutie pie. Did you know that? Did you know that? I know. The world is collapsing and you don't care. You just like belly rubs and love. Okay, bud. Down you go, buddy. Good boy, bud. Yep, his innate weirdness is inexplicable. I saw this one and I wanted to share this one, right? Because this is a really good infograph for like a lot of good, clean information. There are 22 empty homes for every homeless person. 18.4 million empty homes. 842,000 homeless in a given week. So, like, this idea that what we need to be doing is building more homes is laughably stupid. Like, not just incorrect, not just wrong, laughably stupid. There's 22 empty homes for every homeless person. We have way more than enough housing. We've got way more than we need, right? And sure, we're preparing for like immigration, and sure, there's going to be that kind of idea of like a growing population and all of this kind of stuff and so on and so forth and waka waka waka. But you're telling me that we cannot resolve this housing crisis? You're telling me that we cannot resolve this homelessness crisis, right? Like, we're living as children in a dream world of our own creation. Like, we're not facing reality. We're not acknowledging the facts. We're literally just staggered by the perceived complexity of a system that is in fact not that difficult to understand. The percentage of millionaires, right? In the United States, 1%. Congress, 50%. This, of course, is by design, right? If you read the Constitution, if you read it how it's written, they outright confess, they admit straight out, right? That, like, the goal of the system is to ensure that the wealth of the nation stays in the seat of power. The power remains in the wealth of the nation. And that design is bearing out as successful. And Major, I bet you anything, it's like 50% are millionaires, and then the other 50% are probably, they're probably wealthy, but they probably own businesses, right, that they don't draw a salary from, right? So they themselves are technically not millionaires. This is one of the great grifts that the millionaire and billionaire class, like I heard plenty of people use this, right? Well, they don't even draw a salary, right? They're not that wealthy. It's like, dude, like they own like an oil company. Like you're telling me, like when they go to meetings and when they do this stuff, like of course they're using their business in order to facilitate this kind of stuff. Like they don't need to draw a salary, and they're obviously doing that to get around tax law, right? Like it's obvious that that's the case. And my feeling is that you've got 50% of the Congress that admit to being millionaires, and then probably another 50% who are like, I'll just, have my business, and then I work for my business, right? I don't even draw a salary from it. Like, John, not to fight for articles, but did you see the one I posted about boomers benefiting from cheap housing? Where is that posted, Barnabas? This is another thing about this. Like, I feel like the general, I think I need to break this up. I think general is I'm gonna turn this into just conversation. We're gonna turn this into just like memes. In fact, memes. Save changes. Get out of here. And then we're gonna make another one, and we're gonna call that articles. Just a little bit more organization, I think, needs to happen, especially if this is going to happen. Like, if you guys are going to ask me to look at stuff, and it's, I'm spending all my time looking around. So 18 corporations get wealthy and one person gets homeless. Yeah, exactly. Seems like a fair trade until the homeless start setting everything aflame. Yeah, boomers massively benefited from the commons. Well, I mean, like, the boomer generation was so well placed. Well, everybody wants to be a mod all of a sudden. Okay. I can't make all of you mods. Boomers massively benefited from the... I mean, the boomer generation was... They benefited enormously from... They benefited enormously from the timing of everything, right? That, like, the post-World War II, the silent generation, the communists and the socialists fought to increase unionization, to increase the power of labor, to increase all this kind of stuff. And the boomers benefited greatly from it and then dismantled it. Like, that's the shocking story of the boomer generation, right? I choose to, instead of blame individual boomers, instead of saying, like, oh, you're a boomer, therefore, blah, 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 blah. Like, I choose to talk about it from a more systems perspective. And that, like, because I feel like people get part of the reason why we've dismantled the system is because people got convinced that, oh, I'm successful because of me, right? When the system was obviously designed to ensure your success, right? Like, if school is cheap, the minimum wage literally pays for a house, like, it's tough to not be successful in that kind of arrangement, right? It makes sense to say just get a job if you can just, like, walk out of school at grade 9 and go get, like, a manufacturing job across the street, right? Like, so, but that doesn't exist any longer, right? It simply doesn't exist. Gen X isn't going to be able to hide behind the boomers for long. Just wait until you see my generation in action. The hate will flow through you. Yeah, I mean, Gen X has been doing nothing but capitulating, right? Because for a long time they've had to, right? Like, they literally couldn't do anything. That the boomers said, this is what we're doing. Hey, Bumble, how you doing, bud? And Gen X has basically just been like, I guess this is what we're doing, right? I hate it, but, like, what are we supposed to do, right? We're outnumbered, we're outgunned, right? We're outwealthed. Like, there is no avenue for Gen X to go. And because Gen X has been doing nothing but capitulating for their whole lives, even though they've been doing it, well, begrudgingly, when they get into the seat of power, right? Well, they're not going to suddenly overturn the table, right? Because they're going to view this last section of their lives as the reward for having capitulated. That's what it's going to be. And meanwhile, the millennials are just going to start committing suicide, right? That's basically what is happening. Poverty from 2007 to 2010, more than 20% rise is the dark blue, right? 10 to 20% rise is your slightly lighter blue, and then up to 10% rise. So there's been at least a 10% increase in poverty. And of course, this is only up to 2010. They use these modes generation to divide us more and more. I agree with you, Pissed Off. That's why I don't really spend... And if I do talk about the generational divides, I'm trying very much to have a more sympathetic position, right? Like, it's... I don't like the individualization. I don't like to that... Because that's the trap, right? That's the trap. Okay, buddy. Okay, guys. I got to do a chair stream for 1 second here. My little dog is driving me up the wall, whining at me. You want some peanut butter, buddy? Chair stream. I'm super professional. Chair stream. This is what you guys tune in for right here. This good stuff. Me talking in the distance, getting my little pug. Man, even as early as like 10 years ago, people would be like, this is disgraceful. How unprofessional. You mean he just gets up in the middle of the stream and walks away? He just goes and gives his dog peanut butter in the middle of the cast? What? Can you imagine if, like, Walter Cronkite delivering the news. If you'll excuse me for one moment, America, I have to stop talking about the Iraq War in order to give my dog some peanut butter. And everybody be like, that's okay. That's fine. I'm telling you, the only difference between generations is the aesthetics of how we're groomed to the capitalist agenda. Yes, I think that's right, Bumble. I do. I think that's correct. That, like, I think it's classic. It's not just capital that creates, like, this generational grumbling. There's lots of evidence to show that generations have grumbled about other generations all through time. Like, I think that's fairly normal. But, like, in capitalism, it's ramped up to the nth degree, and it's used as a way to divide on behalf of the ruling class. And the more confusing the generation that follows is to the generation that just came up, the better, right? The more difficult it is for these for us to talk to the young or the old, right? The more difficult it will be for us to actually organize meaningfully, and that's why I'm trying so hard to really fall in love with Gen Z. These kids are crazy, right? I love it. I do. Gen Z kids are nuts, man. Like, they're nuts. All of their TikTok shit, all of the crazy memes, the, like, absurdism of it, the Dadaism of it, the nihilistic, like, just absurd ad nauseum constantly that comes out of Gen Z, the gender conversation, right? The breakdown of gender roles, the breakdown of what is feminine and masculine, hair dye, tattoos, piercings, clothing styles, fashion, right? I love it. I love all of it, right? It's Gen Z kids are like a walking rebellion. Like, everything about them is just screaming in your face constantly what you think about the world is wrong. And I love it. I love it. I'm so on board. Like, I'm here for it. Right? Like, if the Gen Z kids wanna rebel against the whole system, right? We just gotta funnel all of that rebellious energy into an anti-capitalist movement, because, like, the capitalist system will sell their rebellion back to them, right? That's what they did in the 90s, right? There was, like, a rebellious streak that happened in the 90s. They just sold it to us. Like, they're going to do the same thing. The classic phrase is that the rebellion will not be televised. And I think that's actually false, right? That the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will absolutely be televised. They'll sell it to you, right? That they'll sell you the revolution. You hear boomers say, I made $7. I did all right. Yeah. That's the equivalent of $51. Yeah, exactly. No, but this is more or less what I'm talking about, Harry, is that you got to make sure that the generational divides are so big that the generations can't actually understand one another or, like, talk to one another in meaningful ways, right? That's crucial, right? And that manifests itself most cleanly in this very point, right? Where you have boomers walking around being like, well, I made $7 in 1970. I did okay. And, like, people are like, dude, inflation exists. Like, the price of living is absurd, right? Like, these guys are living on pensions and have bought houses when they were like $1,000, right? Like, and so they've got all this equity and wealth that they've built up, and they just think everybody else can do that. Right? And they don't recognize that the system doesn't work that way anymore, right? It, like, literally doesn't actually work that way. And nobody is actually working to inform them of this, right? Like, there's nobody at Fox News or, like, CNN or any of this being like, okay, well, let's create a perspective. Like, quite the opposite. They're doing everything they can to ensure that this confusion, like, because this confusion that you're bringing up here, Harry, I've seen that confusion for 20 years. For 20 years, it's gotten much worse. Like, the split between the level that $7 is worth has gotten much, much worse. But for 20 years, I've been saying this, right? You're telling me that I was making the minimum wage then and it was fine. Well, guess what? Like that's like worth like 3 times less now. I've been saying this for 20 years, and I've never seen an article come out of any mainstream industry being like, okay, there's a confusion that exists. It's a clear confusion that exists in the society, right? You've got an older generation saying like the minimum wage is fine where it is because I made that much money when I was your age. Right? Okay, well, we can show you very cleanly, right? That's not, like, they're not going to do that, right? And why aren't they going to do that? Because they require our confusion. And they want the central antagonism in the society to be literally anything other than the class, right? That if we can antagonize along race lines, gender lines, generational lines, then we're going to do it, right? And create the central antagonism, because the central antagonism that actually exists in the society is so pervasive and persistent and unavoidable that you need to generate other conflicts so that people don't actually focus on the only conflict that actually is unavoidable, right? Like that's why the capitalist system is such a failure, right? And why I argue that the capitalist system is such a failure, that there is a conflict embedded in the structure of the society that is unavoidable, that you either must capitulate to it or you must confront it, and it's completely unavoidable. So they don't want us to confront it, right? They don't want us to actually talk about it. They don't want us to actually deal with it. And so a strategy that the capitalist system generates to defend itself is to create conflict elsewhere, right? So it ends up being a form of gaslighting, right? You create and generate conflicts elsewhere to deflect people's attention away from the true conflict that exists at the heart of the society. And if we got rid of this central conflict, would these other conflicts be so aggressive? Would they be so overwhelming? Would they be so heightened and shoved in our face? I don't think so. I don't think so. They would probably still exist. We'd probably still be talking about them. We'd probably still be like a level of confusion, and probably still be a level of difficulty that exists in the society. But I don't think it would be there wouldn't be the culture war that there is over it, because the society wouldn't be incentivized to generate crisis to deflect from the true crisis, right? Which is exactly what we're doing. And you can see that right here, writ large, right? Workers produce more than ever, but wages are stagnant, right? It's a very simple point. Productivity, right through the roof. And this starts happening in the 1970s. And the average hourly wage basically stagnates, right? Where do you think they're generating their wealth from? Where do you think their money is coming from, right? This graph is the only graph that really matters. Put that line, tie it to productivity, and a lot of our social problems are going to go away, right? But you know what that means? It means that this parasitic class, right? This parasitic class is not going to be able to generate free money for itself. Man, I just got off the phone on hold. The jazz guitar I was listening to was ever so slightly out of tune. Jerry Trust Matthias, good to see you. Millennials will be the Mao of the Gen Zs, and they will be the Red Guard. I mean, one can hope. The anti-work movement, I think, will get much stronger. I mean, I know for myself, I keep thinking about, we need good responses. We can no longer expect people on the right to actually respond rationally to debate and argument, right? We literally can no longer expect that. It's over, right? These guys are living in a dream world. They're not responding to reality at all. And so what we have to do is we need to begin sloganeering, because it's the only thing that they actually respond to anymore. If you can't respond to their sloganeering because it's all they have, right? Just get a job as a slogan, right? They haven't thought of it about it. No, they don't know anything. No, they are illiterate, and they're happy they're illiterate, right? They're proud of their illiteracy, and so the only way that they actually communicate is through slogans, and if we don't actually respond to their slogans with slogans, then we're not going to be able to communicate with them. And my strategy is like we need to come up with good slogans to counteract "just get a job," and the best that I've done so far is I won't be your accomplice. Like, I don't see any reason to be an accomplice to this. Like, to be an accomplice to the destruction of the species and the environment and the culture and the civilization. Like, I have no, like, why would I want to be an accomplice to this? Like, fuck that entirely. Like, but that's not very satisfying, right? It's not, because it requires a larger explanation that these guys are not capable of perceiving or understanding, right? Like, they like work hard to not understand the subject. And if we don't come up with good slogans to shut them down, like, and embarrass them, because that's all we've got. Like, that's all we've got left. Like, they're like, these guys are not actually capable of things like shame. They're not actually capable of, like, self-reflection or any of that kind of stuff. Like, they're incapable of it. If they were capable of it, they would certainly be doing it, right? Like, they would currently be embarked on the path of self-reflection due to the overwhelming shame of perpetuating a system that is generating these outcomes, right? They would certainly be doing it. So all that's left is to just embarrass them publicly until they finally shut the fuck up about it. Like, that's all that's left, right? Like, it's there's no other options. Like, we can't just stand by and sloganeer our way to the grave. Like, it's unbelievable what we're experiencing. And if we don't actually, like, and also I find that, like, the slogan strategy, it's a good idea because we need to just dismiss these guys. Like, literally, like, they're going to come up with their just get a job bullshit, and we need to be able to say, like, 5 words. That's the most potent slogan that has come out of the left in probably my entire life, has been "Okay Boomer." That "Okay Boomer" was a slogan that was extremely effective and completely changed the narrative, right? It showed the Boomer generation that we no longer value you. Like, you're finished from the conversation, old man. Here's the door. Get out, right? The "Okay Boomer" slogan was extremely effective. And I find that I just say okay, right? I don't say "Okay Boomer," but the implication is there, right? When these guys start saying their nonsense, I just go okay, right? And nothing angers them more because it's a dismissal, right? It's just letting them know that they are invalid in my view, but I don't care to have a conversation with them because they're not capable of growing. Right? They're children that never grew up, and we've got to dismiss them as such and move on with our lives. So it's, and like, if they can't be convinced now, they're not going to be convinced. Like, it's literally going to be like my house, like the house next to mine burnt down, but my house is perfectly safe. Oh no, my house is on fire. Oh, we got to do something about houses on fire. Like, that's literally what it's going to be for 30 to 40% of the society, if not more. How our tax dollars are spent, for God's sakes. Like, education spent. Look at military. Look at us take a genius to figure out what's going wrong, right? Like, this is all wasted. Like, war is a waste. It's just pointless. Doesn't achieve anything. Meanwhile, the U.S. has 5% of the world's prison population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. Right? The racist criminal justice system, 1 in 15 black men behind bars, 1 in 35 Latino men, 1 in 105 white men. It's crazy. I look at Gen Z and see that they know the social contract is broken. Yeah, there's no sense in going along when it's obvious the powerful aren't obligated to uphold their end. Yeah. Like, and there's no justice. Like, there is no justice system that the system of justice exists exclusively to maintain the capitalist domination, to maintain the wage slave society, right? Like that's the only reason there is a justice system in America, is to just maintain the wage slave society. And you can tell that's the truth because the wealthy and powerful keep getting caught doing overtly crazed, nefarious bullshit, including things like pedophilia, right? Like just massively evil things that they continuously get caught doing and nothing happens to them, right? Like if this Jeffrey Epstein scandal were to have broken in China, people would have been hung over it. Like, they hang billionaires. Like, that is what would have happened in China, right? Like, what are we doing? Right? Nothing. Fucking not, fuck all. Like, fuck all nothing. And so, if you're a Gen Z kid, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's no laws, right? There's no legal system. There's no, like, you don't need to, like, Robin Hood didn't follow Prince John's rules, right? Like, it doesn't take a brilliant mind to figure this out. And you have an entire generation of kids that are coming up realizing that the system has betrayed them completely. And it's a total betrayal. Like, it's a complete fundamental betrayal. And they're coming up, and while they're coming up, there's literally old men telling them how the world used to work is still how the world works. And all these Gen Z kids can say to them anymore is, okay, boomer. Which was extremely effective. Because it was just a dismissal. Like, and boy, did the boomers not like that. Like, you could get banned off of subreddits. You would get banned off of places for saying, okay, boomer. Right? Like, that's effective. That means it worked. Yeah, I made $3.15 an hour in 1984 and was broke and poor. I don't remember what my peers live in, man. I remember. Shouldn't minimum wage be like $26 an hour? Yeah, if it was to keep pace with inflation. I think there's a strategic reason to demonize boomers. They're not going to come to our side, and anything they say needs to be dismissed. So society hates them all the better. Am I too cynical? The problem with that grinning is that it alienates those boomers who do see things the way that we see them. That's the truth. And there are boomers that are like that. For sure there are. Right? There are boomers who definitely understand that they are benefiting from this system, but that this system has abandoned their children. And so if you lump them all in and say this generation is the problem, then you do end up alienating that group. And you don't have to. Like, that's the other part about it, is that you don't have to. Like, keep the focus on the class dynamic. Talk about things like, I find that when I talk about the boomers in terms of trauma, like, the boomer generation was inflicted with major traumas, right? Like, the CIA propaganda that existed for the boomer generation was enormous, right? Absolutely enormous. And so if you have this absolutely crazy and huge propaganda machine just jamming shit into your brain, yeah, it's gonna fuck. Like, well, there's gonna be a ton of people who are gonna get fucked by it. It's gonna be massive. And remember, it's the boomers that adapted to the system you hear from on Facebook. Boomers like me and my wife are not heard. Yeah, look at Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon's a great example, right? That there are boomers who are trying to push back, right? And a big problem, I think, with this generational demonization is that if you're just going to throw your hands up and say, oh, all of these boomers are terrible, well, then there are boomers that have been publishing really powerful shit. Like, Chris Hedges is a boomer, right? Like, are we just going to reject his words and reject what he says? Like, Noam Chomsky, right? For fuck's sake, Chomsky's so old he might actually be of the silent generation. But, like, I worry that there's a good amount of that happens. That because this person is in this generational situation, and then we just no longer listen to them. Whereas if they're going to shit on capitalism and if they're going to shit on the class divide, then we definitely should. In capitalese, productivity equals less people doing more work for less money. Yeah, exactly. I mean, not every boomer is like lost. There's some good boomers in there that kept up. I mean, but you also see other divides, right? Like the city-rural divide is like this too, right? That it just comes down anybody, create any divide except the class divide, and then heighten the divide as much as you can. And we just have to avoid it. We got to step around it. Did you watch the video of USA representatives getting owned on Indian television for trying to chastise them about Russian oil when they're asking Venezuela, who they are also sanctioning? I didn't see the video, but yeah, like the US is looking like a bunch of assholes about this, right? That the oil is going to get shut down, right? That the EU is actually going to commit to this path. It's insane. It's insane that the EU is actually committing to this path, where they are going to say to Russia, we're not going to buy your oil in rubles. We would rather not get your gas or get your oil, right? And so the Russians are going to shut the pipes off, right? Like it's cutting your nose off to spite your face. And like Biden is warning everybody about it. Like every time Biden talks, he's talking about this. And like it's going to, like oil prices are going to go crazy, right? Food prices are going to go crazy. Like everything's going to go fucking nuts because of this, right? And it's going to go nuts in huge and significant ways. And then and this tells you how fucking incompetent these guys are and how detached they are from reality, is that they're turning around and saying to Venezuela, who they've been sanctioning for fucking 20, 30 years now, right? Literally saying, oh, the actual leader of Venezuela is this guy Juan Guaido, who can't win an election, right? Barely gets 15% in elections, right? But he's the actual leader. Certainly not the guy that keeps winning the elections, right? Like, incidentally, the guy that keeps winning the elections is a dictator, by the way. And and then they're turning around and saying to Maduro, please, sir, please, can I have some oil? Please? I know that we've been sanctioning you for 30 years and we've crushed your populace and everything. So it hasn't been 30 years. It's been shorter than that. But it like, literally, the United States is so incompetently run and so detached from reality and so incapable of planning and understanding how to negotiate and how to create relationships that they're literally like punching a guy in the face, right? And then the second they need something from him, they like put him up on his feet and like dust him off and say, so can we get that thing? As if the response from Maduro is going to be anything short of go fuck yourselves, right? Like, but this is what you get when you have a psychopath nation, like when you've got a nation that's completely turned psychopathic, and the rest of the world sees it. Like China, India, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Africa, they're all looking at that and just being like, yeah, that's fucking dumb. Like, of course Venezuela is going to tell you to fuck off. Why wouldn't they? And so, like, who can the Americans turn to? Who's left? Like, who's left? They're fucked. Like, they're fucked. We're fucked. Here in Canada, we're fucked. Right? And of course, the strategy from the Biden administration is blame the war, right? Blame the Russians. Like, dude, if the Americans wanted to end this war, they could, right? They could absolutely end this war. They could have ended the war 10 years ago, right? Like, what's so fucking ridiculous about this whole conversation surrounding the Ukraine war is that, like, the more and more farther I get away from it, the more I see that my opinion of it basically aligns completely with the head director of the CIA, who wrote when he was the ambassador to Russia that what we're doing in Ukraine is going to draw Russia into a war, right? Here it is. Here it is. So it's like, but if you say that out loud, then you get banned off things. Like, literally, I agree with the head director of the CIA. Banned. Oh, okay. Like, and the hysteria is going to get fucking worse by a lot. The hysteria is going to get worse. And how is it going to get worse? Well, prices are going to keep going up, right? Food is going to become scarcer. Rent is going to become more expensive. Homelessness is going to spread, right? There's going to be more and more people living in poverty, living in desperation, right? And as that all occurs, the proponents of the capitalist system are going to silent dissidents, right? We're already seeing them do it. Like, so we are going to enter this like incredibly crazy period where everyone is going to just lose their fucking minds and become hysterical. Like, more hysterical than we already are. Like, it's going to be worse than this. Like, that's the big, like, that's the big crazy thing that's going on. If just getting a job was the answer, then they wouldn't have to say just get a job. I mean, but they don't care about that. Like, I've said to them, like, I have 3, right? And their response to that is get another one. Like, because it's a dismissal, right? And I've actually said repent to these guys, right? That shuts them up, actually. Like, they don't know how to respond to that. Like, these construction workers that came and heckled us, right? Because they're expecting a fight, or they're expecting some kind of like chew out or some kind of thing like this. And if you just say repent, they don't know what to say, right? Because they're used to people losing their cool, right? Which is the goal, right? The goal is to have a disabled person cry in front of them, right? That's what they want. That if a disabled person breaks down and cries because of their verbal abuse and heckling, then they win, because that's what they want. Right? So I just say repent. And that basically gets the point across, I think. Like, you're bringing the Bible into it. Slogan response to get a job is jobs are for losers. I mean, there is that. Boomer complains, take it out of your mortgage. Capitalism fails wherever it's tried. Well, but what's been so annoying, right, about is that capitalism or the capitalist countries had a little moment where it seemed to be working, right? But it was working because the socialists and communists basically forced a social democracy out of it, right? And forced the capitalists to capitulate to the point where it's at least livable, right? At least there was some kind of socialization and some kind of social programming. Some idea of like, let's not just abandon the poor and the disabled into the streets, right? You definitely need to make a post dedicated to the Blueberries story. Video, Reddit post, whatever, just make it shareable. You got it, a box. That's a good idea. That's a fairly good idea. Like, it's so dumb. Like, it's so dumb, right? Like, we are disincentivized to grow food. Like, we're disincentivized to do it. Not that we need to be growing more food in the first place. We throw away like 40 to 50% of it. But like, there's the capitalist system itself is grinding to a halt. And it's grinding to a halt because of things like this. Because if you can't meter it, or if you can't exploit it, like, imagine if we made so much food that food lost its value. Like, imagine if you could just like walk down the street and there was just so much food, right? That everybody had. It'd be like if there was a tree in the middle of a park that always had apples on it 100% of the time, right? Like, let's say somebody made a tree that when you plucked an apple from it, another apple would immediately appear, right? So you would pluck an apple, another apple, pluck an apple, another apple, right? That would completely tank the apple market, right? Apples would be worth $0. So if somebody made this technology to produce infinite apples, right, the capitalists would suppress it and would ensure that that technology didn't get spread into the society. Because if something is infinite, like air, you can't charge people for air yet, right? Because it's so ubiquitous. It's unavoidable. You can't meter it. How do you meter it, right? Although if you watch the movie Total Recall, you see pretty clearly, like, what do you think a guy like Elon Musk is going to do? Like, if we all get up into Mars, right, and there's air generation, well, what is he going to do? He's going to meter the air, right? Like, but if you can't meter it, then they won't make it. But to me, that's the reason why solar energy has been fought against so hard by Western forces, right? That you got to look to places like China to see mass production of solar panels, right? And we've been so against the idea of solar generation because a decentralized power grid is terrible for the capitalists. They're absolutely against this idea. Because if you can just have a solar panel and generate your own solar energy for yourself and for your own household, well, then a worthless capitalist can't insert himself between you and the power generation. And so it's terrible for capitalism, right? Like, this idea that capitalism is the most innovative, the only thing that capitalists innovate is more parasitical behavior, right? They're very, very clever when it comes to being parasites. But when it comes to actually doing anything or creating anything or generating anything, they're terrible. It's just awful. Nationalism is a mental disorder. I mean, I look at it a little bit differently. I think that, like, nationalism is just the natural result. Like, of course, a monkey would be a nationalist. Like, like, once you accept that we are basically just apes who figured out how to articulate to one another with a degree of proficiency, right? Have created a broader language to get into an abstract space, which we've developed over thousands and thousands of years, right? Like, we have found ways to sort of supersede it, that we've created like a meta understanding. Like, we can just look at a map, for example, right? Very simply, right? Like, just being able to look at a map alone helps break down the nationalist impulse, right, that exists within. But if you've never looked at a map, right, if all you live, if the only place you live is like Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, right, if this is the only place you've ever lived, ever, and in fact not even in Portage per se, let's say you live down here by the 305, right, let's say you live just over here, right, your property is like right here, right? And this is like the only place you've ever lived. You don't read books. You don't look at anything. You don't look at maps. You don't try to expand your horizons in any meaningful way. You are fundamentally just a walking, talking monkey, right? Who has access to fucking nuclear technology and shit and guns and the like, right? Yeah, if that's who you are and you never attempt to develop a perception of the meta self, which let me be specific what I mean when I say that, which is that you never attempt to view yourself outside of yourself, right? You never take an opportunity to imagine a third-person perspective of yourself, right? You never look in the mirror and say, oh, okay, so the perception that I'm seeing is not just a reflection so that I can like pick this zit or shave or something. It's literally how other people perceive me. And that perception, that meta perception, can actually be zoomed out further and further, right? So most nationalists only really get as far as this border, right? But you keep zooming it out, and so you get a larger perspective. And then you keep zooming it out, and then you get a larger perspective. That's why I like showing the China walks. That's why I like doing the walkabout videos, because it helps break that nationalism down in significant ways. But it's something that you have to do, right? And why do you have to do it? Because the natural impulse for a monkey that's been randomly generated in the world is nationalism. Like, it makes sense. Like, I'm not saying that I agree with it, obviously. Like, it's literally close-minded, right? In the most, like, literal kind of a way. It's literally close-minded, but it makes sense that it would be the starting place. Like, it's like why it makes sense that a 2-year-old is a sociopath. Like, it makes total sense that a 2-year-old would be a sociopath, right? Like, it makes total sense. It's a survival strategy. Like, a 2-year-old needs attention. A 2-year-old needs to believe that it is the center of the world. A 2-year-old needs to cry and get its mom's attention and be a pain in the ass, right? It needs to do that. It's got to be that way. And I view nationalism the same way. But just like how we expect children to grow out of this sociopathic behavior, and some of them don't, right? The people who are never actually permitted to grow up, like your Ben Shapiro's and Jordan Petersons, they just stay that way. But most people, you expect them to grow up, and you expect them to understand basic things like sharing is important, right? Other people in the society are actually people, right? They're not NPCs, right? They're actually players. You put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? All these like colloquialisms and things that we kind of take for granted are actually crucially important for us to understand the walld in appropriate ways, right? Like view someone else's position, take someone else's viewpoint, right? Walk a mile in someone else's shoes, right? Live in the world, and especially attempt to perceive yourself as others perceive you. Understand that level of perception. And we wouldn't expect or accept like friends and family who were still acting like 2-year-olds if they were 30 or 40, right? And I feel the same way about nationalists, right? Like it's understandable to have that kind of a viewpoint when you're a kid or a teenager or even in your 20s, but like grow up. Like, there comes a moment where you got to realize, like, oh, this place that I'm in is just one of many places. And everybody has grown up in a place that is similar in some degree to the place that I am in. And chances are good that the similarities outweigh the differences in big and significant ways. But we have to purposefully do it, right? And we don't. We don't really have an education system, right? We've got an indoctrination system. We don't really have a system that's interested in broadening people's horizons. Like, I'm seeing more and more, right? One of my favorite things that just comes across my purview, the algorithm loves showing it to me. And you know why? Because I love it. It loves showing me those videos where it's like, let's put a map in front of someone, tell them to find a place on the map, right? And they'll always like get it fucking horribly wrong. Like, literally, I saw a guy just today be like, yeah, that's Africa. That's Africa. Like, bro, like pointing at Australia, that's Africa. Like, holy shit, dude. Holy shit. Anyways, that's a big, long diatribe I just went on about nationalism, but like, it's embedded in the ethos, in the generation process of who we are as people. And if we don't actually actively work to get away from it, like just how we like teach kids to share, right? Just how we teach people that like it's important to actually make sure that everybody has enough food and has enough shelter, or at least we used to. Just in the same way, we've got to overcome nationalism in this way. Right? And my recommendation is that we actually create an education system, unlike the thing we have now. Capitalism needs a poor underclass of surplus labor. Now that the unemployed numbers are getting to be a majority, you can't control people with shame about get a job. It's over. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely, but that is absolutely the truth. They still use it though, right? Yeah, there are people living in the shelter I work at that have full-time jobs, still can't afford rent. Yep. But again, like, they don't care, right? Like, you say this stuff to these get a job guys and they just don't care, right? That the solution is always get a job or get a better job, right? And that's as far as they can go. Like, they literally can't go farther, right? If they could go farther, they already would have, right? And so just like, we got to stop engaging them on these terms that are built into this idea that they can be convinced or that they're interested in being convinced, right? Which is why I think we just start saying repent, right? Repent. Like, not only are you wrong, right? Like, not only are you wrong to say what you're saying, but what you're saying is actually deeply evil and disrespectful and dismissive, right? And that whole concept gets boiled into a single word: repent. And that's it. They don't know how to respond to it, which is exactly what we want. We want them to walk away from the conversation having been dismissed, insulted, and confused. And the way to do it is to tell them to repent. Like, and that's all you say to these guys. You don't engage them in the conversation. You don't debate them. They're not interested in that. They're interested in watching a disabled person cry in front of them. That's what they want, right? It's obviously what they want. Why would they be doing what they're doing if not to have people cry? If not to watch disabled people break down and have a temper tantrum so that they can scoff and laugh about it with their other fucking fascist Nazi friends. So the only thing that we should say to these guys is repent. Like, that's all that's left. We can't get random social good. We need that money for bombs. Exactly. God, I wish boomers were actually out of the conversation now. I mean, we've got boomers in the chat right now. There are boomers right now in the chat. But like, if you wanted to pick a group that we should be throwing stones at, it's the conservatives. That's who we should really be throwing stones at. How many times am I going to teach you this lesson, old man? Okay, I'm going to catch up with this chat. I've been statistically there are more living Gen X than living boomers. Yeah. 5,350 boomers die per day. Yeah. Oh yeah, Gen X has some humdingers. Yeah, so $2 an hour in 1970 is $14.82 hours today. Yeah, so if you're making $14 an hour, so if you're making like $15 an hour, you're making a little over $2 an hour in 1920 or 1970 rather. And like we keep begging for poverty wages. Like we keep trying to negotiate for poverty, right? It's incredible. Lately, I've been using "Don't worry, boomer, you'll be dead anyway." It's a little harsh. Shuts them up quick. Boomers were the first generation to be raised under German-style fascism, Operation Paperclip, yeah. What about boomers from, like, the Black Panthers? Yeah, what happened to most of the militant Black Panthers, the ones that survived to become the most virulent postmodernist identity reductionists? I mean, to me, I look at that, Watson, as a survival strategy. Right, like if you're watching the people who stood up and get militant and get like actually try to pursue a class war, get arrested and killed, right? Like if you want to stay in the conversation, you gotta pivot to where you cannot get shot or arrested. And so I look at it as a survival strategy for a lot of those guys. Yeah. The boomers were the first generation raised by TV, right? I think that's what really plays most, Bumbleguppy. I look at that and I'm just like, that's absolutely the goddamn truth. Like, television advertisements alone, right? That is a form of propaganda that previous generations never experienced, right? That like the type of propaganda that you would get would be like guys shouting on the corner. Right? You get like a billboard or something, right? But now you've got a device in your house that is just, you turn on a channel and there's like a never-ending constant stream of propaganda just getting shot at you over and over and over again. And because the boomers were the first generation to experience that, they just had no defenses, right? They just got it beamed right into their faces. And the results of it, I know, buddy, propaganda. CIA propaganda, right? Absolutely. Milo hates CIA propaganda, dude. You start talking about CIA propaganda, it just gets his hackles up like you would not believe. So yeah, Steve Colbert says he doesn't mind paying $15 a gallon if that's the price of a clean conscience. Like, fucking liberals, right? Like, just disconnected, detached, like, no sense of what is real. Right? And like, yeah, of course Stephen Colbert doesn't say he minds paying $15 a gallon because like it doesn't matter to him. Right? Like it doesn't change the quality of his life at all. He still gets driven to his cushy late night job, right? Tells a bunch of shitty jokes, that does an interview with somebody who nobody cares about, and then like goes home, right? And he's going to be able to do that if gas is $1 a gallon or $15 a gallon. It doesn't change his life at all, right? It's the definition of just like a detached, wealthy liberal, right? I watched Steven all through the aughts, watched his late night show once, was like, man, totally sold out. Yep. I mean, that's exactly what he did, right? Like he was doing good work with the Colbert Report when, but I mean, if you ask me, like the true reality of what happened to Stephen Colbert is that the establishment knew that if he was to keep that shtick up, right? Like, think about what Stephen Colbert was doing, right? He was basically spoofing Bill O'Reilly and like the neocons, right? And so you think about that spoof. Well, okay, now bring that into the modern era. What does that spoof look like now? Who is Stephen Colbert or someone acting as Stephen Colbert in today's environment? He's basically a Nazi, right? Like, that's essentially what Stephen Colbert would end up spoofing, is just overt, obvious, grotesque Nazism, and they couldn't let him do it, and moreover, I don't think he wanted to, right? Like, oh, you're telling me that if I'm going to keep this shtick up, where I'm spoofing the right, I basically have to become a Nazi. And the people who I'm going to be spoofing are not going to be people like Bill O'Reilly. It's going to be open fascists like the dweeb, like fucking. I'm blanking his name all of a sudden. You guys know who I'm talking about, right? Like, I can't imagine how exhausting it would be to constantly play a Nazi, right? It'd be tough. So, he's just old and tired, right? His shtick is as easy as it gets. Like, he doesn't even write material anymore. Like literally his job is to walk out in front of a camera, read what the camera says, right? And then just talk to some person who is, and just pretend, like, invest in how they are interesting. That's it. That's his whole job, right? He doesn't write anything. He doesn't schedule anything. He doesn't do any of that. He just shows up when he's told to show up. Says the lines that he doesn't even memorize anything. He just reads it. So, like, I just think Colbert got old and saw that the job that he was doing was going to get really, really hard, and it would get really hard to continue doing that job in today's climate with, like, the Trumpers, the MAGA guys, the literal fascists and Nazis. Like, that's too difficult for an old guy like Colbert. My parents weren't boomers either. They were older when they adopted me. Boomers were raised by a country that became enamored with Nazi accomplishments. TV was part of that for sure, yeah. Well, and one of the more successful propaganda victories that occurred post-World War II was convincing American society that German fascism wasn't a reflection of American culture, when it clearly was. Like, German fascism and American capitalism are like siblings. Like, the Hitler outright, like, what was it called, the Liebermensch or something like this philosophy of thought, came directly from, like, Jim Crow legislation. One of my favorite things that I've ever seen about some of the Nazi writings is that they were looking to Jim Crow legislation for how to treat the Jews in their own society. And many of them wrote that the Jim Crow legislation that exists in the United States, or the segregation legislation, I keep saying Jim Crow, but the segregation legislation that exists in the United States goes too far. That's the Nazis saying it, right? Like, and United States propaganda did a really good job of acting as though America and Germany were, like, different in their ethos and outlook in significant ways. Like, there's a reason why at this period of time there's, like, a virulent socialist and communist movement that appears in the United States. Like, a militant, virulent, strong and powerful, well-organized labor movement occurs throughout the United States during this period of time. It's because the threats are real, and the outcomes are as negative as they can get, right? And we're entering the same period of time because that's what capitalism does. It just generates this outcome, right? It can't not. It has to. It's designed to do it. They fought for civil rights and they fought against civil rights. And they paid the cost of and benefited from empire. Yeah. Then Stephen Colbert says he drives an electric car. Isn't that the best? So he's detaching even more. I used to watch the Colbert Report. It was decent and gutsy. Completely different shill now. Yeah. I mean, he just kind of gave up the ghost. Didn't want to be a Nazi anymore. Didn't want to play a Nazi. This is not really about Ukraine. The WSWS Perspective Day has a spectacular article on this. World, come on, Wordle, World Socialist website. What's the article, Watson? The challenge of May Day 2020 for the international unity of the working class against capitalism, yeah. Sri Lanka president appoints a new cabinet as IMF bailout talks begin. It's always IMF bailout talks, right? That's what the IMF is all about. Like, what a failed institution. Potential slogan, go sell arms to your mama. Yeah. Yes, a Tesla at that. Had to throw in a little Elon simping, of course. Yeah, always got to simp for Elon, right? That's all it is now with him, right? Like, if everybody just kind of woke up and went like, oh, this guy's just like a rich daddy's boy who just buys other people's accomplishments and takes credit for them, like, it'd be the end of him. Yeah, constant war is proof of the falling rate of profit, yeah. Chinese electric vehicles are going to become mainstream in the U.S. if we are allowed to import them. But that's the other part of it, right? Like, are we going to be allowed to import them? Are they just going to put tariffs on? For God's sakes, like, Donald Trump is about to get reelected, right? And here's a guy who is throwing tariffs and all kinds of shit on the Chinese economy, right? China, right? So, like, America's doing everything it can to decline as quickly as it possibly can. Just get a job in an alternate timeline, bro. Man, if food had no value, I would so stuff myself on tempura shrimp. I mean, just total pig. Amazing. Amazing. Give them the air, Cohagen. Give them the air, Cohagen. Yeah. Yeah. What a great movie. Total Recall really stands up, by the way. It's a super good movie. Not the new one. The new one was shit. They took out all the stuff that was good about Total Recall. And, like, Colin Firth, I guess. Fingers crossed for that deep fried calamari tree tech, yeah. Capitalism requires everything to go through the capitalist. Exactly. Worthless middlemen, right? Speaking of random generation, Get No Man's Sky, it's now completely amazing. I've been seeing that. Dude, I'm too deep in Elden Ring. I'm way too deep in Elden Ring. I'm like on like an Elden Ring thing. And I can't justify spending money on another game. That's all it is. Like, I don't have enough money for rent. I like literally bought Elden Ring being like, no, I shouldn't. I absolutely shouldn't. And then, like, I just broke down, cried a little, spent the money, and now I'm gonna drain every last inch of nourishment and accomplishment that I can get out of that game. I'm just gonna squeeze it out. Right? I played through once already as a wizard. Wasn't really happy with the magic system, so I changed over, and now I'm literally running around with Wolverine claws. Just going up to people and murking them as Wolverine. Like, literally straight up, like, just Wolverine. I don't care. And then I've already got my eye on the next character that I'm going to build, and it's going to be like a holy priest guy, or but wielding like a scythe. I'm going to be using a scythe like mad. That's the goal, anyway. Anyway. Video games. They're so great. I love them, but they're a touch off topic. Although I do love them. You know what? They're not off topic at all, right? Like, look at what we're doing. Like, look at what our video games are now, right? Like No Man's Sky. Like, literally escape the planet and go explore somewhere else. Let's investigate and explore like a desolate wasteland. Like, Elden Ring is fundamentally a story about a decayed and fallen empire where it's been taken over by these godlike sort of figures who their constant warring and battling with one another have completely destroyed the world in major and significant ways. Like, When you're walking around, there are like entire cities that have fallen into ruin and disrepair. And we're walking around exploring this stuff and looking around this world being like, this is great. Like, we have like a desire for living in like wastelands and like an apocalypse that we would prefer to put our energy in to fighting like evil zombies in a wasteland apocalypse than dealing with like the banal like grinding torture of what it is to exist in this reality, right? Because at least when you're killing zombies and shit in a video game, it's fairly clear cut. Like it's obvious who the villains are, right? Yeah, that shambling undead corpse over there is the bad guy. Go kill him. And you're going to kill him and no one's going to say anything about it. Like everyone's going to be like, okay, you killed the zombie. Good for you, right? But in this society, right, the structure of this reality is far more odious and far more insidious. That there's enough power left in the shambling zombie corpse that if people were to pick up arms and actually fight against the evils of the world that they're being presented with, as if it was a video game, right? That the society would say, oh, you're the bad guys. You're the bad guys. How dare you fight back? How dare you fight back, right? So it's like no wonder we're escaping into these other worlds, right? Where we actually get to fight evil, right? And like fight evil. Not debate evil, not point out evil, not educate people about the evil, but literally pick up a weapon and smash people's heads. Like, of course we're playing those video games. Because it's what we want to do. Right? It's what we want to do. You're telling me that when you hear the story about Jeffrey Epstein, right? You hear the Jeffrey Epstein's Island, it doesn't make you, like, genuinely think, like, oh, those people should be rounded up and killed. Like, I think there's something wrong with you if you don't think that. Like, and when Jeffrey Epstein was suicided, when he committed suicide, quote unquote, right? Nobody went, oh, poor Jeffrey, right? Everybody was just like, yeah, fuck that guy, right? Like, in my opinion, the way he died was probably the best outcome for him. Like, so, like, no wonder we're retreating into these fantasy worlds, right? Because these days, seeking justice is a fantasy. People try to tell me that patriotism is dying in your country, and I think patriotism is stopping to help someone change a tire. Yeah. Like, oh, people tell me patriotism is dying for your country. Well, and like, isn't it interesting how the people who call themselves patriots, they seem to really only mean the only type of patriot that can be a patriot is a white person, right? That there's plenty of that going around. That it's not actually patriotism, right? It's fascism, because they're talking about a type of patriotism that elevates the white supremacist agenda. That's really what it is. Like, what you're saying here, right? Patriotism, stopping someone help change a tire, right? That's actually patriotism. It's helping somebody because they live, like, in your country, right? It supersedes the idea of race. It supersedes all this kind of stuff. But that's not what the patriots actually think. I think anti-colonial nationalism is good and can be a great natural ally to sincere, principled internationalists. Well, like, the Go Local movement. Like, is the Go Local movement, is that nationalist? Right? And those are the people commenting on other people's countries' politics. Yeah, exactly. Like, everything is up to the individual, and if you're failing in your life, it's your fault, but we have the right to tell other countries how they should be. During the pandemic, everyone went on and on about protecting the vulnerable, which we did pretty badly. Yeah? Now we're cheering on sanctions that could kill the most vulnerable in Russian society. Yeah. Well, and what Russia is doing, and it's showing in the price of the ruble, right? Like, the price of the ruble dipped, and now it's back where it was, right? Why? Because Russia pivoted to China and Saudi Arabia, and it started trading in the ruble, And a lot of countries have looked at it and been like, oh yeah, okay, we'll trade in the ruble, right? Like we'll trade in the ruble, for sure. And so the Russian ruble is fine, right? And the sanction regime, like, and there are all kinds of stories coming out of Russia where like McDonald's pulled out of Russia, right? In like this huffy like, oh yeah, we're gonna pull out of Russia. So what did the Russians do? Well, they took all of those McDonald's, they took the M, they took the M and they pivoted it, right? And it created like a 3 sign or whatever. And now they call them Uncle Vanya's. And what are they? They're McDonald's. But they're cheaper now, right? Because they don't need to pay these worthless middlemen, right? So like, what's the sanctions? What are the sanctions actually achieving? What are they actually managing to do to Russian society, right? I literally go on like Russian social media and take a look around, and literally the only commentary I'm seeing coming out of the Russian people in regards to the sanctions is, oh good, the capitalists are leaving. Like, how is this anything but a resounding success? Like Russia was communist for longer than it's been capitalist, right? Like the idea that like capitalism came in and we're the greatest now, and if we leave everything will be worse. Like Russian society was not capitalist for a very long time, right? And was it like we think of, oh, if the capitalists leave, it would be a disaster, even though it would be great, honestly. But we think this, that if the capitalists leave, it will be a disaster. The Russians are literally like, bye, capitalists. Like, bye. You've only been here for 30, 40 years. Like, we don't care. Get out of here. Right? Like, there are people alive in Russia today who lived in communism. Like, or in a society that was attempting to be communistic. Like, it's just the idea that you're going to sanction Russia and it's going to actually like impact them in a big and meaningful way, and it's completely backfired. Like it's like completely backfired. That Russia pivoted to China, right? It tightened up their trade relations in big ways, and now Russia is beginning to have important conversations with like Saudi Arabia, right? Important conversations with India, right? And the whole thing is tightening up, and it looks like these guys, like Saudi Arabia recently, they had a television show where they openly were mocking Biden, right? Like, you didn't see that shit in Saudi Arabia before. You didn't see the open mocking of George Bush. You didn't see the open mocking of Obama, right? Now they're openly mocking Biden, right? And they're not returning his phone calls. Like, the Saudi Arabians have pivoted. They've pivoted to where the power actually lies in the world, and the power actually lies in China. Because real economies are based on people, and based on how powerful and strong your people actually are, right? And China is doing everything it can to ensure that they have a strong populace, that the populace is wealthy, well-fed, can actually pursue objectives, right? Can actually be involved in the wider society in meaningful ways, right? When billionaires break the law, we hang them, right? Like, that's a powerful society. That's a powerful country, right? That's true power. Like, true power of a nation, like a truly powerful nation, is one in which the richest man breaks a law and then is punished for it. And if your society's not doing that, you're a weak society. Period. Full stop. If the rich only have to pay fines, then that's just the cost of doing the thing. Right? That's all. During the pandemic, buy our capitalist stuff. Buy our capitalist stuff. Buy. Yeah. TV was used as babysitter. Yeah. Colbert should be spoofing Vosh and BreadTube. No, but Colbert benefits from Vosh and BreadTube because the problem, look, the number one problem with guys like Jon Stewart, Colbert, right, and BreadTube, right, and guys like Vosh, right, all these guys, even Piker to a degree, right? Well, anyway, but definitely Colbert and definitely Stewart, is that they're basically pro-imperialist, right? That they are permitted to critique the domestic policies in the society, right? That they can stand up and be like, wow, inflation, right? They can stand up and be like, hey, what's with the stock market, right? They can stand up and be like, hey, healthcare is kind of an issue, don't you think, right? But when it comes to international foreign politics, right, when it comes to what's going on in China or Russia or throughout South America or any of this, they essentially tout the pro-imperialist line, right? That Maduro is a dictator, right? That Gaddafi was a dictator, that Assad is a dictator, Putin's a dictator, right? Everybody's a dictator, right? And there's and John Oliver in my view is the worst of them, because while Stewart and Colbert kind of do it in a low level kind of capacity. Like they'll have an interview with someone, and in that interview they'll be talking about it, and they'll just kind of go along with the imperialist line, or they'll kind of bring it up in sort of an off sort of sense. John Oliver will literally do like pro-imperialist propaganda on his show. Like the episode that he did about Venezuela was overt, obvious, crass, moronic pro-imperialist propaganda. And that's how all these guys are. So a guy like Colbert is never going to spoof BreadTube, because that's BreadTube's agenda. BreadTube is pro-imperialist all the way. That if you put something on BreadTube that's anti-imperialist, it dies, right? It's very straightforward. And someone like Vosh is a pro-imperialist. Like he thinks that the American empire is ultimately good. And that's who all of these guys are. Bernie Sanders broke Colbert. You want to expand on that? That one, the challenge of May Day 2022. We got it. I'm just a boomer still playing Diablo 2. Diablo 2, dude. Diablo 2. Did you get the update? Did you get the new one? I played the new one too, dude. It's good, right? They did it, right? They got like a new patch coming out that's rebalancing everything. I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. I'm definitely gonna go my Hydrasork. And when I play Diablo 2, I only play hardcore. Fuck this idea that you can just like walk out and just kill. Oh, I died. Oh well, let's go. Like no, fuck you. Hardcore mode. That's the only way to play Diablo 2. And if you're playing Diablo 2 any other way, you're a bitch. Fuck you. You gotta experience the level 50 character that dies because of a lag spike, right? Your internet went out, your character died, too bad. The internet is part of the game. The lag monster eats characters. Absolutely. You gotta experience that moment when you turn the corner and there's just like a sudden mob that surrounds you and eats you and you die. Too bad. You died. Get fucked. I actually and can't ghost when the X calls. Oh yeah. Another thing I really like about Diablo 2 though is like they have the mechanic of like you can take items and put them into your shared stash. So when this guy dies, so it gives it like a roguelike kind of a feel. That's why I really like it. So you can like kind of build your new character as you're playing your old character, and then your old character dies, and so you take all this stuff and then you build your new character with it. And then you do the same, and you. Why am I not surprised you're a hardcore Hydrasork? Dude, Hydra was, but it's bad. Like it was never any good, right? That's the problem with Hydrasork. But now with the new patch, you can just like come into a room and just like cast a bunch. Fuck yes. Anyway, you have a really beautiful comment here, Bumble. I want to read this. Hey, John, just want to take a sec to thank you for this show. So many times I feel like you are articulating what was ticking my mind, and I'm really grateful. Thank you. Breadloaf. That's very kind of you, Bumble Guppy. I appreciate that. You know, a lot of... I've been experiencing a lot of self-doubt about this show and about what it is I'm doing and about like the walkabout videos, which I didn't do one today because the weather didn't permit it. The weather was too bad today. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from people really reminding me that like it's not actually about me, you know? It's not actually about me. That I get caught by capitalist propaganda and the financial concerns and all of that kind of stuff, just like everybody else, for sure. But really, at the end of the day, the reason why I do this show is because I know how important it is to not feel alone and not feel isolated during these kinds of crises. And that, like, the story I keep reminding myself and keep telling myself is I remember what it was like when 9/11 happened and we were marching into Iraq and we were doing all of that, and I knew, like, I was a 9/11 truther, so I was kind of deep into that element of it, but I knew at that time that what we were doing was wrong, that it was based on a lie, and that it wasn't just a mistake, it was a moral abhorrence. I knew. But everybody around me, people I respected, people I cared about, people I love, were either complacent about it, apathetic towards it, or in favor of it. And I was isolated. There was nowhere I could go to actually even hear anybody really stand up and say, this is wrong and we shouldn't do it. And for me, the Iraq War became a real litmus test for someone's credibility. And there were a lot of this is where I get connected to Chris Hedges, right? Because Chris Hedges came out against the Iraq War. He loses his post at the New York Times over it, over refusing to go along with the Iraq War. He gets booed off stage during a Harvard address where he talks about it, right? And when it was happening, I thought to myself, there it is. There's a guy. There's a guy who's actually doing it. And so I really connected to Chris Hedges like that. And so I'm doing this channel because I know that there are alienating times are here already. Like, they're already here. And part of it is for myself, so I don't feel isolated like I did last time, right? But a big part of it is so that other people won't be isolated, and that there might be a doc that they can port in to at least talk about their experience, talk about what's going on, talk about the difficulties they're having, and just so that they know there's someone else out there who thinks the way that they do. And hopefully I'll be able to do that for as long as I can before they shut this down, which I think is coming. But until such time, right, we all do our best with the way we can. So thank you for your kind comment. Yeah, being anti-war, anti-imperial is socially isolating in the US and Canada too, I guess. Yeah, I feel you, pal. Yeah. Good opportunity, right? Like, share, subscribe, send it around, tell people I exist, right? If you got $1 jangling around in that pocket, right, I could use it to feed my dog with. I know, buddy. I know. Wind. It's getting kind of windy, right? So he hears the wind and he's like, that means someone's attacking. Probably not, bro. Probably not. Yeah, get good, noobs. Hilarious, dude. No, Diablo 2 stands out, dude. It's better than Diablo 3. And they're just about to come out with Diablo 4, and I'm just like, nah, Diablo 4 is not going to be any good. Capitalists can't make good shit anymore, right? Because it's all made by in like groups. Like, it's all made by what are those called? Focus groups, where like they put it in front of people, and like the most banal sort of middle of the road is what they're looking for, right? Because they want to sell it to as many people as they can. So they find the most like banal middle of the road, mass acceptance, mass appeal perspective that they can have. And then they release that, and it's just drivel. It just sucks. Like, Diablo 3 sucked. Like it was a significantly worse game than Diablo 2. And well, thanks Bumbleguppy. Necro Summoner for sure, dude. Necro Summoner is a slow game though. Like it's a slow game. You can't it's safer by a lot. The last Necro Summoner I made lived a long time and then died to a lag spike. So it's just like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? The worst thing happened to me, though, where I fully equipped a paladin in Sigyn's gear. So he had the full Sigyn set. I'd found the full Sigyn set and got him equipped with it at like level 12 or whatever. And he dies at like level 20 to, I forget what it was he died to. But just something crazy, dude. No, I love the Necro Summoner. I do. Necro Summoner is great. You get like 60 summons on the screen at once. Like, get completely fucked. Thank you for your donation, Bumble. I appreciate it, bud. In the invasion of Iraq, I was still working in churches, and I remember getting quite a few earfuls about just war theory. Yeah, and the reasons why we needed to preemptively invade. Yeah. Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable to hear church folk say it. I'm in the same boat. I knew church folk, and they were arguing in the same way. It was the same shit. All just war theory. We got a good reason we're under threat. Like a place that doesn't have a fucking military. Like, sorry, it doesn't have an air force, a navy. Doesn't have like a missile system. Doesn't have nuclear bombs. Right, doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, right, doesn't have any of this shit, literally rocking like World War II Soviet era tanks, right, when we rolled into Iraq, right, like this is how stupid this whole thing was. When we rolled into Iraq, we literally had like targeting systems and drones that like automatically targeted tanks, and then like we could fire on them while the tanks that we were firing upon were still like guys with binoculars being like, oh, there's the tank. Okay, so we gotta crank the wheel to move the thing, while literally our system was like, tank detected. Like, no hope. And then on top of that, we outranged them. Right? Like, so like, it wasn't a fight, I think is the big thing, right? That this whole just war theory that these illiterate rubes were spreading into the society, this garbage narrative. Like when we talk about like detached from reality, we are 100%. We are talking about 100% the this just war theory nonsense, right? They couldn't shoot back. Their tanks couldn't actually shoot us. Like, if we wanted to, we could carpet bomb them from the sky and there was nothing they could do about it. This is the thing that we need to preemptively invade. They can't even get to us. Like, what are you talking about? In order to do 9/11, in order to make that happen, they had to hijack our infrastructure. Like, a somewhat appropriate response to that would have been, oh, maybe we should just tighten security in our airline, which we did, right? We did. So this idea that we need to go invade Iraq over it, it's childish. And anybody who even defended it, like, my perspective is as clean as this. If you ever defended the Iraq war, you've got no fucking business calling yourself a Christian. Period. Full stop. Like, Christ would pull out the whip and whip you. Like, shut the fuck up. There's no such thing as a Christian defending the Iraq war. Like, it doesn't exist. It's a contradiction in terms. So we just got a whole nation of pretend Christians is what we got. I always played through as a sorcerer. Yeah, sorcerer's the best. I do a more wide array because it's fun to have like different characters, and sometimes just good shit drops for like barbarians, and so you're like, well, guess I'm making a barbarian. And it's just as simple as that. But I always lean towards sorcerers as well. Ice, my go-to is usually the ice orb, because the ice orb just fills the screen with nonsense, and you're just like, ice orb, ice orb. But now with the new build, with the new stuff, I'm thinking the Hydra looks good now. Hydra looks good now. Have you heard Hedges talk about Christo-fascism? Yeah, one of his most recent books was American Fascism, right? And where he's talking about the Christian right, and he's spot on, right? Like the neocons and all, and what's coming out of the Christian right now, it's total fascism, like completely. Are you kidding me? Like. Christian cult bullet crowns. Like, I show this over and over and over again. Right? This is what's happening to Christianity. Like, you are getting, like, images like this. Like, literally they're sitting in church wearing crowns made of fucking bullets. When they pray and do their prayers, they're fucking holding like AR-15s and shit. Like, Christianity is going this way. Like, it's lost the thread completely. Child soldiers fighting in trenches who could do nothing but hope that a bomb didn't land on them. Yeah, exactly, dude. Iraq and Afghanistan is the scary brown people, so not much people sympathize with their deaths. Meanwhile, Ukraine is the damsel in distress with the blonde hair. Yeah, that's completely right. Now Turkey is attacking Iraq. Well, Iraq no longer really exists. Like this map, like this map doesn't exist. Like this isn't what the borders of Iraq are, right? Like the society is completely fractured. Like it doesn't work this way, right? Like you've got like Iraqi oil fields, right? That's all anybody actually cares about. And you've got is it the Sunnis in the north or the Shiites in the north? You've got one group in the north that's basically running itself and running its own show. Then you've got another group in the south running its own show, right? The Americans base themselves out of Baghdad, right? And it's basically just fucking oil companies. Like there's no Iraq. Like, it doesn't exist. And there's no politics. Like, nobody's actually, like, we should address the issues that the people are facing. Like, there's none of that. It doesn't exist, right? And if Iraq, like, should the Americans leave Iraq, I think that the thing that is most likely to occur is that Iraq's just going to break apart. It's just going to break apart into several pieces. Like, even if the lines aren't changed, right, it is going to do that. Because, like, the country is completely fractured. It's completely destroyed. And it hasn't had leadership since Saddam Hussein died, right? That the quote-unquote leaders of Iraq, like, are basically just installed losers who nobody even knows about or cares. Who's the leader of Iraq? Nobody knows. Nobody cares because it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Who is the leader of Iraq? Yeah, Barham Salih, right? An Iraqi politician of Kurdish origin who is serving as the 8th president of Iraq. But nobody cares. Like nobody cares because it doesn't matter. Like it literally is irrelevant. Like everybody knows that this guy doesn't matter, right? Like his whole role is to if the Americans come and ask him to do something, he goes okay, and he does it. Like that's his whole job. So, like, what's it fucking matter? Kurdish territory up north. Right. Ugh. I'm a professional, goddammit, Major. A professional. I know what's going on in the world, and that's why you're here. What? Okay, anyway. So, like, there's just no way, in my view, that Iraq stays like this and stays together. That it really is, yeah, and you must remember, borders of the Middle East were drawn by the Allied powers after World War II. Some peoples did well by it, some peoples didn't, yeah. And like, and the reason why these lines are drawn aren't because they're going like, well, these people are here, and perhaps it is good if these people rule over themselves, and these people are here, and so we won't lump them together. No, they draw these lines so that they can be like, okay, our company owns that territory. Yeah, there's brown people in it, but we own this territory, okay, guys? You guys can own this territory over here, right? And then those guys over there can own that territory over there. That's why these lines are drawn the way that they're drawn, right? It's just to say, like, here's the line here. Saudi Arabia says that they want to have control over that, so we'll let the Saudi princes have control. But after this line, we control this territory over here, okay? Like, that's all. They don't give a shit about the Kurds or the Sunnis or the Shiites or any of this shit. They don't care, right? They literally don't know anything about it. Like, they literally don't know anything about it. Like, the people who are drawing up foreign policy for the United States don't know anything about the countries they invade. Very straightforwardly. My PCA like to shit when bosses die and people would always grab the loot. See, Strifey, dude. Oh, Strifey. You just, like, plunged a dagger deep into it. There's a reason. I only solo. I don't play with groups because it's just like, that's exactly what it is. It's just like, I feel it. Oh, yeah, so to talk to your point, like Turkey attacking Iraq, like Turkey's not really attacking Iraq. There is no Iraq, right? Chances are good that like Turkey is defending some kind of resource that they have. And like this border that technically exists is not really like, oh, that's my nephew. Sorry, nephew. Doing my stream. Beautiful boy. Just turned 12. Just turned 12. Can't talk to him right now, of course. The like this line exists, but it doesn't exist. Like it's straight, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the Turkish people are like there's some like company over here, right? And they're like, okay, but like there's a little bit of resources like right there, so let's just like push in. Who cares, right? Like if the Canadians can literally like shove pipelines through Wet'suwet'en territory, right? And right. Hold on. What? Yes. Okay, hold on. I feel like it's here. Come on, John. What? How'd I do? Close. I was like up here. I should have known. Okay, I did okay. I was thinking it was here, but then I said, no, it's probably here. And so I just overblew it. Anyway, like if the Canadians can be literally like pushing a pipeline through territory that doesn't belong to them, right? Like then, yeah, of course the Turkish people are going to do the same thing over here, right? Like, and that's probably exactly what's happening. That like, oh, there's like a little deposit of like uranium or lithium or something just on the other side of the border. So we're just going to go in there, and there's some like Kurdish people who live in the mountains. We're just going to fuck them up and put a mine there, right? I'm just as much a Christian as every other American, which is not at all. My great-grandfather fought against the Soviets, British, and Americans. In 1943, even from his entrenched mountain position in Italy, he could see the enemy's beautiful skull proportions and blonde and blue-gray eyes. It was much better than it was in the East, where they definitely charged across open fields, but only half of them having guns and 14 bullets on average. Crazy. Your great-grandfather fought against the Soviets, the British, and the Americans. He sounds like he's just like a man on a hill, dude. All the formerly colonized nations are designed to foment internal conflict. Europe got people to fight each other rather than prosper. That's a good point, actually, Grinning. That's a good point. Like, why allow these people to peacefully, like, you want them in conflict with one another. That's actually a really good point. Like Grinning said, I think a lot of the lines were created to a pressure cooker, internal conflict. I haven't played Diablo 2 since having a CRT monitor and no pubic hair? What? 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 CR Strifey, dude. What? Like, for real. All right. Watson wanted us to take a look at this here. The challenge of May Day 2022 for the international unity of the working class against capitalism, national chauvinism, and war. Ah, you were 12. Yeah, okay. The war that erupted on February 24th, 2022 is an event of world historic significance. As in all major conflicts, the question of who fired the first shot is of entirely secondary significance. Okay. The reckless, incompetent, and desperate character of the Russian invasion of Ukraine exposes the politically bankrupt and reactionary character of the Putin regime, but it does not explain the deeper causes of the war. But you just said they were secondary. Okay. The outbreak of war in Ukraine has long been foreseen. The relentless expansion of NATO in the aftermath of the dissolution of the Soviet Union has always been directed toward war with Russia. The overthrow in February 2014 of the government led by Viktor Yanukovych in a coup organized and financed by the United States was an undisguised attempt to bring Ukraine into the orbit of NATO and convert it into a launching pad for future war against Russia. As the International Committee of the Fourth International explained at its May Day rally in 2014, the purpose of this coup was to bring to power a regime that would place Ukraine under the direct control of the US and German imperialism. The plotters in Washington and Berlin understood that this coup would lead to a confrontation with Russia. Indeed, far from seeking to avoid a confrontation, both Germany and the United States believe that a clash with Russia is required for the realization of their far-reaching geopolitical interests. This war, instigated by the US NATO forces, has now begun. The overwhelming majority of those who have been rendered homeless, suffered injuries, or have been killed bears no responsibility for the policies and decisions that led to war. But the suffering of the innocent victims is being cynically exploited, not only to block the exposure of the political and economic interests that led to war, but also to foment the required level of anti-Russia hate that is necessary for the escalation of the conflict. According to the propaganda origins of American and European imperialism, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has shocked the conscience of the world, which, so the story goes, had been living blissfully in peace until the Kremlin launched its entirely unprovoked attack against its blameless neighbor. What a colossal and hypocritical lie! For the past 30 years, the United States has been continuously at war, instigating conflicts all over the world. The United States, often with the direct support of its NATO underlings, has bombed and or invaded countries in Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa, the Balkans, and of course, the Caribbean. Even if one were to accept as true all the claims made by the Biden administration and a corrupt American media that regurgitates the daily talking points with which it is fed by the Central Intelligence Agency, the Ukrainian loss of life, both civilian and militarily, is several orders of magnitude below the number of deaths attributable to the wars waged by the United States. According to the United States of War, by David Vine, a professor of anthropology at American University, an estimated 755,000 to 786,000 civilians and combatants on all sides have died in just Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, and Yemen since U.S. forces began fighting in those countries. That figure is around 50 times larger than the number of U.S. dead. But that's only the number of combatants and civilians who have died in combat. Many more have died as a result of disease, hunger, and malnutrition caused by the wars and the destruction of healthcare systems, employment, sanitation, and other local infrastructure. While these deaths are still being calculated and debated by researchers, the total could reach a minimum of 3 million, around 200 times the number of U.S. dead. An estimate of 4 million deaths may be a more accurate, although still conservative, figure. Meanwhile, entire neighborhoods, cities, and societies have been shattered by the U.S.-led wars. The total number of injured and traumatized extends into the tens of millions. In Afghanistan, surveys have indicated that 2/3 of the population may have mental health problems, with half suffering from anxiety and 1 in 5 from PTSD. By 2007, in Iraq, 28% of young people were malnourished. Half living in Baghdad had witnessed a major traumatic event, and nearly 1/3 had PTSD diagnoses. As of 2019, more than 10 million have likely been displaced from their homes in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and Libya alone, becoming refugees abroad or internally displaced people within their countries. Alongside the human damage, the financial cost of the post-2001 US-led wars are so large, they're nearly incomprehensible. As of late 2020, US taxpayers already have spent, or should expect to eventually spend, a minimum of $6.4 trillion on the post-2001 wars, including future veterans' benefits and interest payments on the money borrowed to pay for the wars. The actual costs are likely to run hundreds of billions or trillions more, depending on when these seemingly endless wars actually end. In fact, there's no end in sight. Biden's announcement in April 2021 that he was ending the forever war in Afghanistan was a cynical cover for the strategic redeployment of American military forces for direct conflict with Russia and China. All the wars of the last 3 decades have been justified with blatant lies, of which the claim that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction is only the most notorious, and in direct violation of international law. At the Nuremberg war crimes trial of 1946, the Nazi leaders were tried and convicted on the charge of crimes against peace, which consisted of waging war as an instrument of state policy, rather than in response to an immediate or imminent threat of military attack. The wars of American imperialism fall within the criminal category of crimes against peace. That is, wars launched and waged in pursuit of political objectives. The historical and global political context of the global rampage of American imperialism is profoundly relevant to an understanding of the present war. The dissolution of the Stalinist regimes in Eastern Europe and finally the USSR between 1989 and 1991 removed even the limited restraints that had been placed on the exercise of American military power in the aftermath of World War II. As President George Herbert Walker Bush proclaimed as he launched the first war against Iraq in 1991, with the support of Mikhail Gorbachev as the Soviet Union entered the final stage of dissolution and capitalist restoration, the United States was determined to create a new world order. The project was driven by powerful objective economic and geostrategic imperatives. Contrary to the post-1991 narratives, which portray the United States as the inevitable and triumphant victor in the Cold War, the decades that preceded the dissolution of the USSR had been a period of accelerating American decline. The global economic supremacy exercised by the United States in 1945 had substantially deteriorated during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. The foundation of American world economic dominance, the convertibility of the dollar into gold at the rate of $35 to an ounce that had been established at the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944, became unsustainable as U.S. trade balances deteriorated. It was repudiated unilaterally by the United States in August 1971. The deterioration of the global economic position was exacerbated by military eruptions of domestic class struggle, of which the mass movement of the black working class for civil rights was a powerful expression. At the same time, the bloody effort of American imperialism to suppress the anti-colonial movement of the masses throughout the world, most brutally in Vietnam, led to the radicalization of broad sections of student youth and the emergence of an immense anti-war movement. The years between 1960 and 1990 in the United States were characterized by political instability and social polarization. Urban riots, mass protest movements, political assassinations, and violent and protracted strikes were the major features of the American reality between 1960 and 1990. Developing parallel to the crisis of American imperialism was that of the Stalinist regime within the USSR. There is no question but that the Soviet Union, having emerged victorious, albeit at a staggering human cost, over Nazi Germany, made substantial advancements in the aftermath of World War II. But the fundamental and inescapable paradox of the Soviet Union was that the growth and increasing complexity of its economy intensified the crisis of the entire Stalinist system, which was based on the nationalist program of socialism in one country. Notwithstanding the impressive growth rates realized by the Soviet Union in the 2 decades following the war, the conception of a national path to socialism was contradicted by the objective reality of the world market and the international division of labor, the imbalances and low level of productivity that plagued the Soviet economy, exemplified in the most extreme form the contradiction, affecting all countries, between the world economy and the nation-state system. The development of the Soviet economy required access to the resources of the global economy, but access would be achieved only in one of 2 ways. One, through the abandonment of the planning principle, the reintroduction of capitalism, and the dissolution of the USSR and integration of its component parts into the world capitalist system, or 2, the conquest of power by the working class above all in the advanced capitalist countries, and on this basis, the tearing down of national borders and the development of scientifically guided democratic economic planning on a global scale. The latter alternative was impossible within the framework of the Stalinist regime. The nationalist policy of the Soviet Union was inextricably rooted in its material interests of the Kremlin bureaucracy. Its systematic abuse of power was the means by which it maintained its privileged access to the resources of the Soviet Union. The Kremlin viewed with horror the emergence within the USSR and internationally of a revolutionary working class movement that threatened its hold on power. Stalin's death in 1953 generated illusions that the Kremlin regime would institute wide-ranging reforms that would realize the renewal of socialism in the USSR and its triumph internationally. This repudiation of Trotsky's insistence on the counter-revolutionary character of Stalinism and the necessity of a political revolution was the theoretical and political hallmark of Pavlovite revisionism. But the brutal Soviet response to the uprising in East Germany in 1953 and the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, the massacre of workers in Novocherkassk in 1962, and the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968 demonstrated in blood that the Kremlin bureaucracy would not tolerate a revolutionary socialist challenge to its rule. When it became clear, especially in the course of the Polish Solidarity movement in 1980-81, which initially had genuine revolutionary potential, that the movement against the bureaucracy would not be suppressed, the Kremlin began to actively pursue the counter-revolutionary solution to the systemic crisis of the Soviet economy, that is, the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the restoration of capitalism. The selection of Gorbachev as party leader in 1985 and the introduction of perestroika marked the beginning of the final climactic stage of the Stalinist counter-revolution against the October Revolution. An essential element of Gorbachev's policy was the explicit repudiation of even formal identification of the Soviet Union with the class struggle and opposition to imperialism. In 1989, in a book called Perestroika versus Socialism, the International Committee explained, "The distinctive features of the new Soviet foreign policy are the unconditional repudiation of international socialism as a long-term goal of Soviet policy, the renunciation of any political solidarity between the Soviet Union and anti-imperialist struggles throughout the world, and the explicit rejection of the class struggle as a relevant factor in the formulation of foreign policy. This changes in Soviet foreign policy are inseparably bound up with the ongoing integration of the economy into the structure of world capitalism. The economic goals of the Kremlin require that the Soviet Union emphatically and unconditionally renounce any lingering association between its foreign policy and the class struggle and anti-imperialism in any form. It was for this reason that Gorbachev chose the United Nations as the forum for his declaration in December 1988, that the October Revolution of 1917, much like the French Revolution of 1789, belongs to another historical era and is irrelevant to the modern world. Articles appear regularly in the Soviet press denouncing the foreign policy of previous Kremlin leaders, not for their betrayal of the interests of the international proletariat, but for having been far too hostile to the United States. To the extent that Soviet foreign policy reflected any antagonism towards imperialism, it is ridiculed as a form of political irrationalism. The outbreak of the Cold War is now attributed not to imperialist aggression, but to the USSR's adherence to dogmatic anti-capitalist ideology. The fundamental counter-revolutionary Stalinist revision of Marxism, the claim that socialism could be constructed within a national framework, was replaced by the Gorbachev regime with no less fraudulent and ignorant argument that Russia, once it had abandoned its social pretensions, would be showered with riches and peacefully integrated into the structures of the world capitalist system. Russia had nothing to fear from imperialism, which was dismissed as an ideological concoction of Marxism. Among those who argued most this word along these lines was a young apparatchik in the Soviet bureaucracy, Andrei Kozyriev. He wrote in 1989, "If one takes a look at the United States monopolist bourgeoisie as a whole, very few of its groups, and none of the main ones, are connected with militarism. There is no longer any need to talk, for instance, about a military struggle for markets or raw materials, or for the division and redivision of the world." Rereading these words today, amidst the catastrophe of the US-NATO war against Russia, one cannot help but be astonished by the level of deceit and self-delusion that reigned within the Soviet bureaucracy and nomenclatura as they recklessly smashed up the USSR. But the deceit and self-delusion arose from the material interests of the bureaucracy, as it sought to transform itself from a privileged caste into a ruling class. As for Kozyriev, he went on to become Minister of Foreign Affairs under Yeltsin, functioning as an agent ex officio of American imperialism. The United States viewed the dissolution of the Soviet Union as a historic opportunity to exploit its undoubted military supremacy to offset its protracted economic decline. It would utilize the unipolar moment, the absence of any credible military competitor, to establish the unchallengeable global hegemony of the United States. But this project has proven more difficult than the White House and Pentagon strategists expected. The wars instigated by the United States have met with humiliating failure. None of the strategic objectives of the United States were achieved by the bloody conflicts in the Middle East and Central Asia. Moreover, while the U.S. was bogged down in its forever wars, China emerged as a major economic and potentially military competitor of the United States. The striving for hegemony has been further undermined by a series of devastating economic crises. The Wall Street crash of 2008 brought the entire world capitalist system to the brink of collapse. Prevented only by a desperate bailout requiring the injection of trillions of dollars into the financial system. But without solving the underlying problems that led to the 2008 crash, an even greater bailout was required in 2020 to stop yet another market crash that had been triggered by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, which has resulted in 1 million deaths in the United States and approximately 20 million worldwide, has exposed the dysfunctionality of the capitalist system, which is incapable of responding in any progressive way to a major social crisis. In this respect, there is no fundamental difference between the regimes in Washington and Moscow. The gangrenous ulcers in American society, the most unequal in the world, have brought the entire political system to the point of breakdown. On January 6, 2021, the existing constitutional structure of the United States was nearly overthrown in a fascistic putsch organized by the President of the United States. While it arrogantly postures as the leader of the free world, the survival of even the pretense of democracy in the United States is, as Biden himself recently admitted, in doubt. Far from retreating in the face of past failures from its campaign for global hegemony, the United States is being driven to ever more extreme and dangerous actions. In fact, the severity of its internal maladies has become a major factor, impelling the United States towards measures that were previously ruled out as unthinkable, including the use of nuclear weapons. Why has the United States, using Ukraine as a proxy, instigated this war against Russia? Lenin analyzed the First World War as an attempt of the imperialist powers to re-divide the world. This definition is a basic starting point for understanding why the United States, leading an alliance of NATO imperialist powers, is waging war against Russia. In the present context, the redivision of the world means placing the vast expanse of Russia, the largest country, under direct imperialist control. To the extent that the Soviet Union retained even formal identification with socialism and opposition to imperialism, its dissolution removed what was viewed as a challenge to the ideological and economic legitimacy of the world capitalist system, dominated by the United States. The post-1991 regime opened the Russian economy to foreign capital investment. But the Russian state still sprawled over the globally strategic expanse of Eurasia. Moreover, the Russian oligarchs who acquired control over the national economy were able to limit the access of US and European imperialism to the resources of Russia. For the project of US hegemony to be achieved, unlimited access to the strategic resources of Russia and control of its territory are crucial aims in two respects. First, the actual wealth of Russia's resources is estimated in the tens of trillions of dollars. In addition to the monetary value of these metals and minerals, many of these resources are classified as strategic materials, essential to advanced 21st century industrial economies. Russia is a virtual treasure trove of valuable natural resources, with vast, and in some cases among the largest, reserves of oil, natural gas, timber, copper, diamonds, gold, silver, platinum, zinc, bauxite, nickel, tin, mercury, manganese, chromium, tungsten, titanium, and phosphates. Approximately 1/6 of the world's iron ore deposits are located in the Kursk magnetic anomaly, close to the border of Ukraine. Other rare materials that exist in substantial quantities in Russia are cobalt, molybdenum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium. Russia is also a major source of uranium and rare earths. The latter have become a major source of global geopolitical competition. The fact that there is an intense conflict over access to these critical resources is well known to experts in global geostrategy, but discussion of raw materials and control over the wealth of Russia does not make its way into the mass broadcast, online, and print media, which prefer to have the public believe that American and European imperialism are waging a noble and disinterested struggle on behalf of Ukrainian democracy, even if that requires, however regrettably, arming the fascists of the Azov Battalion. Second, physical control of Russia's territory is vital for what Washington views as the inevitable showdown with China. When the time for open warfare comes, the defense of the Uyghurs against China's genocidal persecution will be invoked as the allegation of Russia's genocide of Ukrainians is evoked today. No doubt, emphasis on the significance of raw materials as a major factor in the instigation of war against Russia will be derided as an example of vulgar Marxism. Be that as it may, in his study of imperialism, Lenin placed immense emphasis on the struggle of imperialist powers to secure control of sources of raw material. He wrote, the more capitalism is developed, the more strongly the shortage of raw materials is felt. The more intense the competition in the hunt for sources of raw materials throughout the whole world, the more desperate the struggle for the acquisition of colonies. Lenin connected the drive to obtain access and control of raw materials to the seizure of territory, and stressed, as an essential element of imperialism, the significance of annexations. Of course, there are many forms in which territorial control can be secured, short of open annexation, which may allow the imperialists to sustain the mirage of independence on the subjected territory. But the mirage will not be the reality. U.S. imperialism and its NATO allies expect that the ultimate outcome of the conflict, however protracted, will be the destruction of Russia in its present form. The shift to a highly aggressive policy was reported in the Washington Post on April 16th. Nearly 2 months into Vladimir Putin's brutal assault on Ukraine, the Biden administration and its European allies have begun planning for a far different world, in which they no longer try to coexist and cooperate with Russia, but actively seek to isolate and weaken it as a matter of long-term strategy. At NATO and the European Union, and at the State Department, the Pentagon and allied ministries, blueprints are being drawn up to enshrine new policies across virtually every aspect of the West's posture towards Moscow, from defense and finance to trade and international diplomacy. U.S. allies plan for long-term isolation of Russia. What are the strategic implications of abandoning efforts to coexist and cooperate with Russia? If the United States and its NATO allies believe that it is not possible to coexist with Russia, the conclusion that follows is that they are determined to destroy it. The different world that the imperial powers envision, and for which they are prepared to risk nuclear war and the lives of hundreds of millions in the process, is one in which Russia does not exist in the present form. The war in Ukraine now fully reveals the catastrophic consequences of the Stalinist betrayal of the October Revolution. This betrayal began with the repudiation of the program of socialist internationalism, upon which Lenin and Trotsky based the conquest of power by the working class in October 1917, and the subsequent establishment of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in 1922. The anti-Marxist program of socialism in one country, unveiled by Stalin in 1924, fomented the resurgence of Great Russian chauvinism that undermined the unity of the socialist republics and strengthened reactionary anti-Soviet and openly fascistic elements, especially in Ukraine, a nation brutally oppressed under Tsarism, from which had emerged many of the greatest leaders of the revolutionary workers' movement, including Leon Trotsky. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in December 1991 was the culmination of the Stalinist counter-revolution. The Russian, Ukrainian, and international working class, now confronted with its consequences, must draw from this immense historical experience necessary political lessons. In a letter to a Russian socialist posted to the World Socialist website on April 2nd, the International Committee explained the principled basis of its opposition to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, notwithstanding the instigation of the conflict by the United States. The Trotskyist movement, the letter stated, does not base its strategy on the sort of pragmatic, nationally grounded conceptions that determine the policies of the capitalist regime in Russia. The letter continued, the defense of the Russian masses against imperialism cannot be undertaken on the basis of bourgeoisie nation-state geopolitics. Rather, the struggle against imperialism requires the rebirth of the proletarian strategy of world socialist revolution. The Russian working class must repudiate the entire criminal enterprise of capitalist restoration, which has led to disaster, and reestablish its political, social, and intellectual connection with its great revolutionary Leninist, Trotskyist heritage. The program of socialist internationalism applies to the working class in all imperialist and capitalist countries. The war in Ukraine is not an episode that will soon be resolved and followed by a return to normalcy. It is the beginning of a violent eruption of global crisis that can be resolved only in one of two ways. The capitalist solution leads to nuclear war through the word solution, though the word solution can hardly be rationally applied to what would amount to planetary suicide. Thus, the only viable response from the standpoint of securing the future of mankind is the world socialist revolution. Inevitably, the question arises, is the latter alternative possible? The answer is provided by an understanding of the contradictions of the modern world capitalism. Lenin's great insight, which he developed between 1914 and 1916, was that the socio-economic contradictions that gave rise to the World War also provided the impulse for world socialist revolution. This insight was substantiated in the outbreak of the Russian Revolution in 1917. In the present crisis, Lenin's conception, further developed by Trotsky and the Fourth International, is being substantiated in the rapid escalation of class struggle throughout the world. The reckless measures taken by the United States and its NATO allies to isolate Russia have immensely exacerbated the already far advanced economic and social crises that afflict every capitalist regime. Mass demonstrations and strikes are sweeping across the globe. The working class and oppressed masses will not accept impoverishment and starvation in the interests of the imperialists' ruling elite's criminally insane pursuit of world domination. As Trotsky explained, the strategy of the Fourth International is not based on the war map, but on the map of the global class struggle. The celebration of May Day 2022 must be dedicated to the unification of the international working class in a global struggle against imperialist war and its root cause, the capitalist system. The strategy and program upon which the International Committee of the Fourth International will develop this historic movement will be the subject of the online rally that will be held on Sunday, May 1st. To register for the International May Day online rally, fill out the form below or visit wsws.org/mayday for more information. I, of course, am going on vacation throughout May Day weekend. So, literally my brother bought tickets. So, there's all these things going on and everybody's, inviting me to them. And I'm just sorry, I'm on the East Coast. Perfect timing. And, of course, that's brought up plenty of times. You're, leaving, for the Labor Day. And I'm like, yes, it's my brother. I'm not going to say no. But that's hilarious. I wish the Trotskyists would go a little easier on Stalin, honestly. Even within the conflict, I agree entirely that the failing of Stalin ultimately is that he was unable or unwilling to create an institution that could respond to the demands of the populace and maintain central authority, right? But I do wish that the Trotskyists would go a little bit easier on Stalin because... they say right here, right? Access could only be achieved in one of two ways, right? Through the abandonment of the planning principle, so just abandon socialism entirely, right? Or the conquest of power by the working class above all in the advanced capitalist countries, right? This idea of international socialism, well, Stalin can't control what happens in Germany, right? Stalin can't control that. And so for him to stand up and be we're going to do this socialism in our own community, right? I'm yeah. I don't, why shouldn't he try? To me, the failing of Stalinism and of Stalin isn't that he attempted to do this socialism in one country idea. It's that he failed to set up an institution that was capable of generating people who would continue moving forward in the capitalist or in the communist ideal, or with the communist idea, right? That the system itself ceased to respond. Much of what was going on in the Soviet Union was the kind of a cult of personality that surrounded Stalin himself, and that communism was continuing forward because there was this strong hand at the helm that everybody trusted and everybody put their chips in with, and they were all going forward with it. And when he dies, it becomes a bit unmoored, right? Because so much energy is put on this single figure. And so, and this article does talk about that a little bit, but I wish that was more the focus, because to me that's the most accurate thing. That it's less, in my view, this view about I would love it. I would love for there to be socialism everywhere. I would love for the entire world's people to stand up and for there to be revolution everywhere, and for us to stand up and so on and so forth. It just doesn't we can't control what happens in Germany, and so I just wish they'd go a little easier on Stalin with this. Anyway, But besides that, like really, really good article in my view, like and really important article. Like they're right. Like the United States is out, and I mean, there are things that can happen. Like if Trump is elected, this whole thing stops. Like that's one thing to think about. Like Trump is against this. Like there's a reason why people support Trump. Okay, like I know that we're all standing around being like, wow, Trump, what a big fucking loser, and like he's a narcissist and he's a wank and he just wants to do this kind of stuff. But anytime he talks about this kind of stuff, right? He's like, why are we going to war with Russia? What the fuck is this about? Like, and they keep trying to smear Trump with this, like he's a Putin simp and he just cares about his own properties in Russia and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, so, like he just doesn't want to go to war with Russia, right? And because he's a like. Trump was elected as an anti-war candidate. Like, he actually was. And so, like, in my view, Trump's going to get reelected in big ways. Like, huge. I think it's going to be big. Like, I think it's going to be a blowout, guys. Like, I genuinely don't think it's going to be close. Right? Like, I think people, like Biden was able to eke out a victory against Trump. Right? Because people were kind of tired of Trump. Trump's going to win this next election, and it's not going to be close. Not even remotely close. Like I'm talking like places where Biden won like 50 to 50, like but by like a single margin, he's going to lose by like 10 points. Like it's going to be big, and like, and it's because of this. It's because people know that this is what Biden is doing. People know that this is like what the American war machine does and that the Democrats are just doing it, right? And they're tired of it. They're exhausted of it, right? That's... Oh, yeah, the MAGA people are going to have a ton of ammunition for this next election. Are you kidding me? And what's great, Ligandese, is that, like, the MAGA hats don't even need to reach for the conspiracies anymore. Like, that's how bad it is. That's how much of an enormous failure Biden is. That, like, they don't actually need to reach for, like, the election was stolen. They don't need to reach for Hunter Biden's laptop, even though that turned out to be absolutely true. They don't need to reach for any of that, right? They literally can just be like, prices have doubled, gas has gone outrageously high, housing is going out of just absolutely insane. And you're talking about another fucking war? Get the fuck right out of here. Like, get the fuck right out of here. Right? Like, that's literally what's gonna win Trump the election. Trump's gonna go up there and stand up there and be like, have you noticed that everything's more expensive and we're going to war with Russia? That's it. That's his whole fucking campaign. These losers... These Democratic losers, right? They're just gonna, it's a terrible idea. Nobody likes it. It's not any good. You know, if you ask me, we'd be better off without doing it at all. Here, let's see what you guys are saying. I'm going to catch up with the chat. The 60s and 90s described were the actions of the left defending itself, for sure. Because imperialism didn't exist until the USSR created the idea in their anti-capitalist propaganda. I mean, there's something to that, Harry, yeah. Only deciding between two parties that offer up candidates chosen by party bosses and the wealthy elite is hardly a democracy, yeah. The fact that the USSR dissolved and Russia is capitalist and the US still wants war proved it was never about communism is bad, like the silent generation told me. Exactly. It's and this article, to me, the most powerful point about this article was talking about the resources. Talking about resources. That's what really matters. Reserves of oil, gas, timber, copper, diamonds, gold, silver, platinum, zinc, bauxite, nickel, tin. That's what it's always about. 100% of the time with these guys. Like, they don't care about the ideology, right? That's just shit that they use to drum up everything. They want the shit. They want the stuff. That's what they want. Don't forget that Stalinism and Leninism and Russia produced the fastest growing economy of the last 100 years. They went from feudalism to outer space in 100 years. It is, that's something, man. Like, I bring that up, and people just ignore that shit. In the space of 40 years, they literally went from, like, I'm going to use a hoe to carve out divots in the soil in order to throw seeds in it to literally shooting a rocket into space. It's an incredible achievement. It's an incredible achievement. Probably one of the greatest achievements of humanity. Like, not just a Russian achievement, but a human achievement. One of the greatest achievements in human history, for sure, was the pivot, right? And they won 2 world wars, just saying, yeah. And they won those wars as, like, the first industrialized wars, too, right? Like, that's another thing. Like, not only did they win those wars, they, like, won the first of those wars, right? Like, and they do it how? With a communist economy. By the way, you don't have to register. You can watch it on the WSWS YouTube page. This is what they write about Elon Musk if you Google his wealth. With his hard work and talent, he has self-earned a net worth of around $200 billion. Shake my head. Elon Musk's father literally owns, like, slave emerald mines. Like literally owns mines where he took slaves and threw them into the mines. Like, yikes. The point of the article is that what's going on in Ukraine is really an opening act and is likely to be about open conflict with China. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, like, they haven't really been, they haven't been quiet about that. West Germany claims that the DDR is a satellite state, yet American, British, and French flags is all I see in West Berlin. Eric Honecker, Chairman, Turning Point DDR. America. Right. The MAGA people are going to have a ton of... Yeah. Like, the MAGA people are going to fucking eat these liberals alive, dude. Like, what do the liberals have? Like, what do they actually have? What can they actually present to the nation as, like, hey, here's a thing that we did. We accomplished this. Give us another term. What can they actually say? Right? They can't say that the quality of anyone's life has improved because that's objectively false, right? They can't say that they successfully built America because their infrastructure bill it was like a $5 trillion bill, and then when it finally got passed, it was like $500 billion, like $100 billion. So some number that's so low, and you all know that money is just going directly into the pockets of the billionaire class. Like, they'll build a bridge somewhere and put a flag on it and be like America, right? And they can't even tout success in Ukraine. Like, they can't even really say that they're victorious here. Like, what is it that the Biden administration can actually stand up and say we did it? There's nothing. There's nothing, and it looks like there is going to be nothing, right? So, like, the MAGA people are just going to eat the shit out of these liberals. Like, don't be surprised if the next election is like that Trump's numbers are basically going to stay the same. It's just that Biden voters are going to just stay home. That's really what it's going to come down to. It's that the people who the group that pushed Biden over the edge, just like really tipped him over, gave him the presidency over Trump, because it was very thin margins. Like, it was a very close election. But like, those people are just going to stay home. It's not that they're going to swing over and vote Trump. It's that they're going to stay home. Because, like, I'm not going to bother. Why would I vote for this? The Trump versus Democrats discussion, I often ask liberals why I should vote for their candidate. I'm mostly concerned about healthcare. I know the Democratic Party will do nothing. I'm also concerned about border security, which Trump is very keen on. Of course he is, yeah. So do I vote the candidate that talks about healthcare and does nothing, or the crazy man who wants to build a wall? Build that. I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like, those are your options. That's what the system has generated. And so, like, what do you do? And like, my position when it comes to electoral politics is, like, if I have to choose between a guy who's saying to my face, I'm going to punch you in the face. Look at my fist. You see this? Right here? I'm coming. It's going to punch you right in the face. Vote me. I'm going to punch you in the face. Right? And then the other guy is standing there being like, whoa, bro, I am not going to punch you in the face, bro. I absolutely promise. I'm not going to punch you in the face. But if I do vote for him, he walks right over to me and just immediately punches me in the face, right? I'm going to vote for the guy that's standing there being like, I'm going to fucking get you, dude. I'm getting you. Because at least he's not a liar, right? At least he's saying to my face, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm going to do it, bro. I'm going to do it, right? And then he walks over to me and he goes, ah! And I go, ah, you did the thing that you said you were going to do. Like, at least he's telling the truth. At least it means that when he says something, I know he's going to do it. Or at least he believes it. Or at least he believes he's going to do it. Right? So, like, if the guy is like, I'm going to punch you in the face, and then he punches you in the face, and then he also says something like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that we end this war in Russia. You're going to be like, he might. Like, he might try at least. Right? Whereas with the Biden crowd, right? Like, I'm not going to punch you in the face. I'm never going to punch you in the face. The people who punch people in the face are the worst people. They're the deplorables in the society. I think it's absolutely horrific that there are people walking around punching other people in the face. What a terrible thing. Vote me. And then you do, and then he walks over and he just fucking punches you right in the face. Just like, boom! And it's like a total sucker punch, too. Like, completely like he was reaching in for a fucking, like, handshake. And you were like, oh, he wants to shake my hand. And then he just comes over and just boom. Just clocks you right out. Right? Well, you know what that means? It means you can't trust a thing he says. Ever. Ever. You have to assume that everything he says is a lie. You have to. Right? So if the option is, I'm going to punch you in the face, or I'm not, but then I do, choose this every single time. Because at least he's telling the truth. And at least it means that when he says something, right, he actually believes it. And he actually might try to do it. Right? Like Trump built that dumb wall, right? It's a stupid wall. It doesn't really work and it's dumb. It sucks and everything about it is ridiculous, right? The whole concept is stupid on the face of it, right? It's obvious that it's stupid. It's obvious that it's ridiculous. Only a dumb, moronic moron would actually stand up and be like, that wall is working out just perfectly fine. But you know what he did? He built it, right? Like he said he was going to build the stupid thing. All right, okay. Like, he's a moron. He's dumb. He's a narcissist. He's idiotic, right? He only wants to be the president so that he can say, I'm the president, right? Like, he's just basically a guy walking around wanking himself all the time. But you know what, goddammit? When he says he's going to do something, he's going to steal from everybody. He's going to swindle everybody. He's going to walk around punching people in the face and grabbing pussies wherever he goes. But then there's the fucking thing. He did it. So, like, that's so goddamn stupid, but that's where we are. That's the United States, baby. That may be true with Russia. I suspect Trump's foreign policy will neatly align with the U.S. bourgeoisie needs, and as it relates to China, yeah. Trump nearly... Nah. Trump didn't start a war with Iran. Nah. Trump didn't even nearly start a war with Iran. Trump assassinated a guy. Like, that's definitely what happened. And then the Iranians came and lobbed a bunch of missiles at a United States base to provoke them. And the United States didn't take the bait. They wanted to kill that guy, and they did. That's the narrative right there. Like, I'm not trying to say, like, Trump's a good man. Like, I'm not sitting here being like, USA, Trump all the way, right? Like, mega hat, right? That's never going to happen. But, like, he wasn't starting a war with that. He was assassinating a leader. That's what he was doing, right? Like, Trump believes in assassinations. He for sure believes in assassinations, right? And he uses them. I'm convinced the rank and file of U.S. voters elected Reagan because gas prices were high. There's something to that. The problem with the high gas prices is all of the red tape. We have to pay such high price in order to get the gas to consumers. And if all we do is just eliminate all of this red tape and government bureaucracy, then all of that money will go into our bank accounts. I mean, your bank accounts. There are a couple of Republicans coming up the ranks who could win in 2020. People keep grumbling about DeSantis and Abbott. Yeah, the mega crowd is too powerful, man. That's all. They want Trump. That's really what it is. Like, I think that DeSantis and Abbott and these guys have a good shot at it in 2028. Or, 2028. Right? Like, in a post-second term Trump. But, like, there's all of the signs that I'm looking at. Like, the strongest group in the Republican Party are those fucking MAGA hats. Like, that's really what it is. And, like, while Trump, I think, has lost a little bit of prestige among that group, it's not like DeSantis is, like, a superstar in there. And the true reality is that Trump is just better on the stage. He is. He's just better on the stage. When it comes down to it, when it comes down to, like, the wrestling match, right? The act of being on the stage and appealing to a mass of people who are screaming and chanting and doing all this kind of stuff. Trump's just better at it, right? DeSantis is gaining his prestige because he's essentially a yes man. He just listens to what people say and then he goes, oh, that's what you want? Okay, then I'll do that. I don't think DeSantis really believes in anything. And I don't really know enough about Abbott to comment on him. But I don't really think DeSantis is kind of just like an empty shell politician, right? And when it comes down to it, like, Trump's got the charisma, man. He does, right? He knows how to sway an audience. The resource stuff, go to the first chapter of the Communist Manifesto. Yeah, the bourgeoisie must settle everywhere and steal everywhere. The Mackinder's Heartland theory, yeah. Considering the socioeconomic situation in the U.S., a re-election of Trump is an indictment of whatever is passing for the left in the U.S. and its policy failures. There is no left in the U.S. And a re-election of Trump will, I agree with you, that, like, this is why I'm not, like, all crying about it, right? Like, the left in America has got to get a smack in the face. Like, a big smack in the face. Like, this moronic internet way of being. Like, we're going to do another podcast, and that's really going to do it this time, right? Like, the left, and, like, the complete disorganization of it all, the capitulation, honestly, the moronic narrative that came out of the left, that, oh, vote for Biden and then push him to the left after, right? This absolutely moronic idea that, oh, we'll vote for Biden and then push him to the left after he's elected. Like, what a moronic position to take. Like, just absolutely blisteringly stupid. So like, I'm more or less of the opinion that the left in the United States needed to put the fork in the fucking outlet. Like, literally, like, we're all sitting here being like, hey, if you put the fork in the outlet, you're going to get electrocuted. And they were like, I think we can convince the electricity to not after we put the fork in the outlet. Right? And so then they put the fork in the outlet, they got shocked, and we're all standing here being like, so, how'd that go for you? Right? And, like, there's no left in the United States. It doesn't exist. Like, and these leftists, like, if people want to be left, right? If people want to be on the left in America, well, they're going to find out that the way to do that is to get onto the fucking street, right? Because when were the gains made in America, right? Through the George Floyd protests, through the defund the police movement, through all of that, which COVID basically blew up, right? COVID basically destroyed it. So we only have one option left, and that option lives on the street. Which, incidentally, come out to the street tomorrow, 11:30, 931, Yonge Street. We're protesting. I turned a blank ballot in 2020. I couldn't vote for either yet. So the U.S. choice is basically mimics the choice in France currently. Well, because that's what the United States, that's what capitalism generates, right? Capitalism basically just generates itself. Right? Like, have you noticed that when you, like, go into a McDonald's, it's like every other McDonald's you've ever been in, right? This corporate culture idea of, like, any place I go to is going to be the same, right? Across. That's what capitalism generates. It generates like a homogeneous oneness. Like just like instead of variety and all kinds of stuff, it's just the same, right? There'll be different labels of it, but it'll all be Dr. Pepper, right? All right, guys, we have reached the end of it. Grinning, being very kind, saying please like, share, subscribe. Think about giving me some money. All the stuff, bells, whistles, all the like. Guys, I really, really appreciate that you're all here all the time, for real. Like, bless each and every one of you. I hope that you are all doing well out there, fighting the good fight, finding your protest movement, finding Extinction Rebellion. I hope you're doing everything you can to not participate in this nightmare. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hope that you won't realize it, so you'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt, rebel, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.